Missing 411, North America and Beyond, Part 1. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent Podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents. This is Brothers of the Serpent Podcast, and we are coming to you not live from the 10x10x10 tangent cube of science, where we are nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. I have shroom coffee. Is that what you said?
Best coffee I've ever had. I didn't make it as strong this time, but it's still good.
Not psychedelic shrooms.
It's got like mushrooms, like this finely ground mushroom powder that just dissolves into the water.
Yeah.
It's got, is it ashwagandha? There's
no
that,
idea.
maca, and something else.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's like a custom made, from one of our buddies. It's really good. Not, again,
dude,
not psychedelic shrooms.
No,
but it's good.
They're like the health stuff.
Health shrooms.
But I put it in.
Does it have kale? Has it got kale in it?
No. I put it in the percolator.
Someone looked offended.
You know, the stovetop espresso maker, the little percolator has the little dish about this big with little holes. And then it's got the screen on top with the little holes. And I packed it in there the first time and filled the bottom with water and set it on the stove, and it started boiling. I'm like, yeah, it smells really good. And then the pressure relief valve was like, I looked in there and there was like a little bit. So I thought, oh, I packed it too tight. And the next time I made it, it did the same thing, and I was real loose. It's just so finely ground.
Too fine, yeah.
So he's going to make a more coarse ground one, and I'll be able to make stronger. So now what I have to do is I just put like 4 giant spoonfuls in a thermos, boil some water and dump it in there and let it steep for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Stir it up. And
it's good.
Then I pour it through a screen into another thermos. Oh. So it does have some grit in the bottom, which I like. It reminds me of Egypt.
Yeah.
Like drinking the Turkish coffee.
I use the stovetop percolator like you taught, and I grind my coffee really finely, so I end up with some.
Your pressure relief valve is always blowing too.
It blows, yeah. it does not like how I pack that coffee ground in there.
I tell you what, though, this stuff, especially coming out of that thing when it was like real strong. God, it's got the best flavor.
It's good, yeah.
I had to tell Jason, I was just like, bro, it's the best coffee I've ever had. Like, it's so
You
good.
had to tell him.
I had to. Had to admit it.
All right, well, there's your coffee corner, Snake Bros Coffee Corner. So we are going to be diving back into Missing 411. This is one of my, this is a favorite subject of mine. I know a lot of people love true crime, and I've spent hours, many hours reading true crime stuff.
I'm kind of getting down with the true crime.
Yeah,
too.
it can be interesting. It isn't the same kind of mysteries,
out, though.
Right? Some of it's yes, yeah.
I'm just like, man, these normal people I know could murder me.
That's
that's the weird part.
Yeah, you always get the he seemed so normal. Yeah, I know. The depths of craziness that some people can exhibit is nuts. And then there's some very mysterious true crime stuff, it isn't like the unsolved things. It isn't the kind of mysteries we normally explore, but this is fascinating because, David Paulides has basically uncovered, I think, I can't remember if it was Whitley Strieber or, his name is escaping me. One of the guys
who's the Watcher.
Yeah, the guy who's one of the hosts of Coast to Coast.
I'll look him up.
Dang it. Yeah. Anyway, one of these guys told Paulides, he was like, I never thought in my lifetime that I would see an entirely new kind of
George Norrie,
not Norrie, the other one,
Art Bell.
Art Bell is
George Knapp.
Knapp. That's it. Thank you. Yes, George Knapp. Thank you, Watcher.
Thank you, internets.
Yeah, George Knapp, I think, was the one who told him that, he was like, you've basically opened up an entirely new avenue of paranormal investigation that you've shown. And that makes some assumptions about whether it's paranormal or not, but it's like these missing cases are not the kinds that where you can normally say, well, it was probably a serial killer or, and it isn't just somebody got lost, and it isn't somebody decided to end their lives by wandering into the wilderness. Something stranger or weirder is going on. We don't know what it is. It could be human activity. If it is, it's very weird and strange human activity, right? I mean, stranger than the idea of a serial killer.
It's weird that some of the strangest aspects of it are repeated across vast areas of land over vast periods of time. That's the weirdest part about it.
And I keep thinking, and so we've done the first 2 missing 411 books. We've kind of covered, and what I wanted to do with this is, like Paulides has done and still does, I think, a lot of appearances on big podcasts, big radio shows, and he always highlights the sort of the top cases in the books or whatever that he's doing. And so those cases get a lot of attention. And I've always wanted to go through, because when you read the book, there's hundreds of cases in there, and many of them have really strange aspects to them that sort of match some of the, the aspects in the big cases that he highlights. But I always wanted to be like, well, let's go through some of the less well-known ones, the ones that he doesn't cover. So we did that with his Eastern and Western missing 411 books, which were the first 2 that he published. And those were, if any of you don't know, he initially was going to write one book, but there were so many cases, 411 was what he initially had, that he split it up into Eastern and Western United States and some in Canada. This third book is after those first 2 books were published, and he went on a bunch of different radio shows, and it sort of got traction. Obviously, it never went mainstream, but he got a lot of traction with people who like to look into mysteries and people who are interested in paranormal stuff. UFO people, Bigfoot people, a lot of people started looking at this. So then he got an enormous number of people contacting him with like cases that fit his profile. So this book is comprised of, he says in the beginning, he's like, a huge shout out to all the people who sent us cases that match the profile, because this book contains, so he's like, he came up, with this information, he now has new clusters and, and new, not profile points, but he's saying maybe there's a connection here, right? Like one of the things he had talked about multiple times is there, in some cases, a reason for them to be taking just people who, for some reason or another, can't speak, whether they're disabled or they end up just not remembering anything, right? Or they have a complete blackout on the response, or they're so young that they can't tell you what happened. And then another question he raises is in some places, seems to be a concentration of very smart people who vanish, right? They're like highly intelligent physicists, and they just go hiking on a mountain and never return. And it's a bunch of physicists and mathematicians in this area that go hiking on this mountain and never return. So it's weird, right?
That is weird.
So in the beginning of this book, he has his foreword, and he explains what's going on with the NPS, the National Park Service, that they still don't admit to. I don't know if admit is the right word, but they basically say we don't keep a list of missing persons in our system. Okay. So he says it can be difficult to, it'd be great if you could go to the NPS and say, hey, can I get a list of all the people that have gone missing in your parks? And then you would have this enormous list of names, and then you could go through and just basically do profile research. But that isn't the case. So you kind of have to comb through articles, looking for missing persons.
But still, I mean, think about that would be one resource, but national forests and stuff, that there's no park service that's tracking everybody that's going out into those forests.
Yeah, you're right. National forest. So there's a lot of hunters in this book, and they're going usually into a lot of times they're going into.
You just drive down a dirt road and park and walk out in there. There's nobody checking you in, or you're not buying a ticket.
That's right. There's actually one case. I don't think I'm going to read it because it's an adult. And what I'm looking for on these is a lot of times his children.
Why you got to do this to me?
What? Tell you that I'm not going to read about a case?
No, you gotta just string up all the kids that go missing.
Because, yeah, okay, I'll get to that. This is a great question. Okay, it's a good question. There is a case in here where this person was. I don't remember if they were hiking or hunting, but it was something where he's going into a national forest area, and they have a little box, and they're like, fill out the permit.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yep.
And
we've done that.
Yeah. And it's just like you fill this thing out, you drop it in the box.
Yeah. How many days are you going to be out there?
When are you coming back?
Yeah.
Right. What is your intention in the forest? And you find out through the course of investigating this case. Well, Paulides basically puts it in here, but he figures this out and he puts it in. Like, the National Forest Service says, oh, well, we don't use those to keep track of when people are going in there and coming out.
What?
And he was, and he's like, I'm sorry, but I filled out a ton of those things, and I thought, this makes me feel better. Somebody knows that I'm here, and they know that when I'm planning to come out, and if I don't, there's going to be an issue. But basically, this guy goes missing. No one knows about it for a long time. Finally, one of his relatives, is getting concerned because he hasn't returned, and he's 4 days overdue, so they contact people, and then they start this big search. They're not even sure where his car is going to be. And then eventually they find his car. Then somebody, a while later, finds, oh, look, here's a slip he filled out for this for this area. And they're like, why didn't you notify anybody? And they're like, we don't use this to keep track of when people are supposed to leave the forest. They're using those things. They had some kind of, they said, we're checking for the tourist load on the forest area. That's what they are using it for. Right? So in other words,
decide where you need to put the kiosk up to collect
peasants
money.
Are going into our forest and breaking sticks, basically, is what they're keeping track of.
They're trying to figure out where to set up kiosks to charge people.
That could be it, yeah.
There's a big load coming into this area.
Yeah.
Pay me.
Yeah. Yep, that could be it. It seemed like it was environmental concerns.
Okay, I could see that too, yeah.
That's what it is. So like they want to know how many people are going in there and putting footprints in their pristine wilderness.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's one thing, where it's like you kind of get this idea, like, oh, I'm going to fill this thing out. And in national parks, this is the case. You fill out something at a trailhead, but there are rangers who are patrolling and they check these things and they are trying to keep track. But like you're saying, in a national forest, like, it's not the same thing as a park, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's state parks, state forest.
Yeah.
So a lot of these cases are associated with basically what you would call government land, but plenty of them they're kind of on the outskirts. So there's like the family farm. The grandparents have a property, and it borders a national forest or a national park or something. Some kid is playing outside in the yard and they're gone. And then there's this enormous search, and the kid is found 18 miles into the national forest where they've crossed mountains and rivers and stuff.
I mean, if you were a breakaway civilization that lived underground, national forest would be a great place to have your little
entrance and exit,
access points, because technology and civilization is never going to come or show up there.
That's right.
At least anytime soon.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess, some people would argue that that's why they're national forests, because somebody already knows that there's something weird going on here. Yeah. Whether it's
Lois and Clark came back and they were like, there are giant holes.
Yeah. Extremely ornate metallic doors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have seen people say that there are people in the gut, whether it's the FBI profilers, because another thing that happens with these missing cases is sometimes the FBI shows up and they're like, we're just monitoring. And the standard assumption, which is a good one, is that the FBI is there because they think possibly a kidnapping is taking place.
Right.
But in other cases, it seems like they're showing up because it just is weird. Not paranormal weird, but it's strange, right? It's like especially with the children, it isn't it's easy to understand that a kid can get lost. It's not easy to understand in some cases how a kid can get lost, and you can have hundreds of people within hours of them disappearing with dogs, with helicopters, with infrared cameras, and you cannot find them for days and days. And then you start to think, well, is this an abduction? But there's just no one out there. It's like an extremely rugged area where even if it's a national park, because it's somebody's property bordering the park, it isn't where the trails are. It's not where the people in the park are. They're somewhere far away. So this is just like completely rugged terrain. And you got searchers combing the area, looking all over the place, and they find little tiny objects belonging to the person. Now, I'm not mentioning any one case here. I'm sort of conflating a whole lot of stuff that happens, right? So these searchers will go out and find scraps of paper from a book the person had, or their lighter in their cigarettes or whatever, one shoe. And you're like, okay, if they're finding these objects, and they're in this rugged area and this is in a thicket, it's like, okay, they're not
really
looking.
Yeah.
But you can't find the body or the person. But then eventually the person shows up, the kid, the adult, whatever, is eventually discovered where in an area that had been searched multiple times.
Yeah, that's so fucking weird.
Right. And a lot of their gear is gone and it's never found, right? So anyway, it's just really, so the FBI will show up and they're like, we're just monitoring the case. And you're like, okay, they're thinking that this is possibly an FBI case. In other words, that it isn't just a person got lost.
Yeah.
That it's an abduction.
Yeah.
And I mean an abduction in the sense that the FBI may just be thinking that someone somehow has kidnapped this person or child, right? So Paulides has pointed out, he's like, he does Freedom of Information Act requests to the Park Service on any of these cases. He files
for requests, all the details and
right.
all that.
And he says most of the time, give him everything they've got, or they tell him, sorry, the files were destroyed because this is a 50-year-old case, or, sometimes they have cases that are 50 years old, and rarely, like with Stacey Arras is one where they have just told him, no, you can't have those files. That was
Is that legal?
I don't know.
They can just deny a FOIA request?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure, but they would not give him the files.
Is this legal?
They wouldn't give him the case files. The case files for Stacey Arras, who was a 15-year-old who went missing in a national park. They just told him he wasn't going to get those case files. Right? He doesn't know why. He just was told nope.
Yeah. And
it's not an open case, right?
Yeah.
It's old. It happened in the 60s or something. So there's weirdness. And, you can imagine that maybe the person at the filing office of the National Park Service was just like, screw this guy. I don't want to give him these files. I don't know. They could have having a bad day, but I'm not sure,
I'm not a law dog, but I'm pretty sure that they are required by law to turn over documents unless there's a classification issue or something like that.
Yeah. Well, the FBI has consistently refused to give Paulides. Anytime he finds out the FBI was involved, he FOIAs them as well. Can I have these case files? Your case files for this case. And they always tell him, no, it's an open case.
Oh, yeah. If it's an open investigation.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an open case.
Yeah.
They went missing in 1955. Right. But it was never solved. So you can't have the files. Right. So he's just like, they're not giving us the files, but he says they're some of the best profilers in the world, the FBI, right? That's their reputation.
Mm-hmm.
It was the reputation. So they are really good. This is what they're trained for, that to find, to be able to put...
It's pattern recognition.
Yeah, pattern recognition, disparate information together. Like they're good at finding serial killers who move all over the place. So that's hard. If you have tiny little local jurisdictions, so a sheriff in some small town, there's a murder, he's never going to connect that murder to ones happening in states all around, but the FBI might. Yeah. Because they'll look at the case and be like, hey.
Database.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when the FBI shows up at some of these cases and it's a missing persons thing and the FBI does not do missing people, then you know that they are seeing something that they want for their files.
I gotcha.
Even if they don't do any investigating, they're like, this fits a profile we already have identified. I think that's fascinating. The fact that they won't give their files up and they tell him it's an open case, I was thinking when I was reading this one.
It might be an open case for a larger...
That's right.
Yeah.
They don't mean that particular
one
case
person.
It's
they
just
mean that's part of a
we're
bigger...
still trying to figure out what the hell's going on with all these missing persons. Right. So that's really interesting. You know, it's one of those situations where you can go as sinister as you want government wise, or you can be like, let's try to say that most people are trying to do their jobs and it isn't sinister, but they're working
the rank and file people. Come on.
They're working within they're working within the bureaucracy, and you know, and maybe the guy at the filing place who got your FOIA that day was having a bad day. You know, I don't know, but some of it does look sinister, and some of them and the missing cases are weird. So okay, now what I'm trying to do. So we now say we can say the FBI is profiling. So that means they're in some sense cherry picking information. This is how they catch. They do pattern recognition. Paulides has done this same thing. He has profiled this information. So he's combed through tens of thousands of missing persons cases, and then the ones that end up in these books are ones that in some way fit his profile of these different data points. Boulder fields, small children who are found far outside of the normal expected range that a kid would go, really bad weather hitting right after the person goes missing. Now that one is interesting because it's like, you would expect this to happen in some cases, right? It seems like really bad luck for you to get lost and then for an enormous snowstorm to happen 2 hours after you realize you're lost. And a couple hours after that, people wanting to look for you, but there's an enormous snowstorm, right? So this is going to happen. So usually with the bad weather cases, there are other factors that come in that make it still fit the rest of the profile. But it is interesting how often bad weather plays a part. And this is more a conspiracy, like, is something able to affect the weather? Or is it more like certain kinds of predators that we know about where they hunt
right before
when the bad weather's about to start, right? This is what makes them go out and do their thing. Yeah. So I don't know.
And the foolish hiker goes out right before a massive snowstorm.
Yeah.
Check the weather, folks, before you vanish.
Yeah. Okay, so now I've been going through and picking the cases that I want to read about. And what we did last time when we were doing, I guess it was Eastern United States, I think, because Western's the first one, Eastern's the second, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But the last time I went through and I tried to pick out cases where children, very young children, had gone missing, were found alive in very strange circumstances. Usually they could not remember, or they said really weird things about what they had experienced while they were lost. And in some cases, they were found with like food that did not exist in that wilderness, right? Mm-hmm. You remember those cases where they had pockets stuffed with strange herbs and things?
Yeah.
Or what girl was eating a tomato, you know?
Yeah.
This book is full of children. Like, I would say, that's where I've gotten so far, the majority of cases are children, and some of them are very young. Not many of them make it back alive. So,
be warned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to pick those cases.
So that's the question. Why are you doing this to me, huh?
You know, you got to be
keeping me on my toes.
You got to be aware of what's going on out there, bro.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll say,
I've been busy listening to how horrible people had it when the Bolsheviks, with the Bolshevik Revolution or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Woo!
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. Hardcore history. And
hardcore history, yeah.
Well, it's that type of stuff, you know, like it's amazing how horrible people can be.
Yeah. The other thing that reminds me, though, I'm glad you said that, because that reminds me that the other thing I've been thinking as I'm going through this is I feel like it's cases like some of these that I'm going to read you that lead to some of the fairy tales we end up with about children going into the forest and strange things happening. And they, you can kind of see how some of these stories are like, be careful in the forest, kids, right?
Yeah.
And so if all the kids are learning about fairy tales, and maybe that they even are told that fairies are real, maybe they're a little more cautious about following something weird into the woods, right? Because some of these you can see like, this is a fairy story. This is a fae case. It's if this had been happening in the 1400s in England, everyone would be like, well, they were taken by the fae. That's what.
Yeah, if they read this book, we've been trying to tell you that for years.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the other thing is that, so what's fascinating to me is that this is this kind of collection of stories, I think is showing how technology is trying to deal with this problem that people have been warning each other about for a long time. So if somebody went missing a long time ago, you got some villagers together and they went and looked for them, but they weren't systematic. They didn't have communications. They didn't have cameras and infrared. And they did have hunting dogs, probably. I don't know how much. Bloodhounds were kind of I think a royalty thing, because it was hunting and you weren't allowed to hunt in a lot of these places.
It's the Kingswood.
Yeah. In the feudal periods. But so here we have highly trained police and hunting dogs, helicopters, airplanes, infrared radar, which is basically just camera that can see in infrared looking for body heat. Thousands of people that can use radio communication that can like basically comb the place and we have overhead maps and GPS and so they find all these little clues that probably would not have been found in ancient times.
Yeah.
I will also say that I know in ancient times there were some people who were amazing trackers, and a lot of that has been lost. Right?
But also, I mean, I would say as an argument that without all the technology, but you still would have had like an entire village start combing a forest together.
That's right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You would have had that.
Yes. It just
wouldn't. But then when night falls, they're like,
Yeah, exactly. yeah, exactly. You're right. There's the lighting is a big part of it too. But
I mean, even in the daytime in a dense forest, it's nice to have a headlamp.
Yeah. You're right. I was just thinking, like, I wonder if some of these details are like we're getting these little clues that maybe didn't make it into the fairy stories because they couldn't find these then, right? But there are a couple of cases in here, and I haven't read the whole book yet, but there are a few cases in here where the people, it's like the sheriff and the forestry service guys, and they're like, well, you know what? There's a reservation here. There's an Indian tracker there who's really good.
Yeah.
And they get this guy, and he's like, he looks around at what they're all doing, combing the forest, and he's just like,
yeah.
And he follows the track and finds him.
Wow.
Right?
That's so freaking cool.
But he goes way
Show me your powers.
Yeah.
Native.
And he's climbing.
Teach me.
Climbing cliffs and stuff, And this same thing happens with dogs sometimes, is the dogs will track their scent in the opposite direction that everybody expected this person to go.
Wow.
And sometimes what's funny is the dogs will track the scent for miles this way, but when the person is eventually found, they're miles that way. And it's like, were the dogs wrong, or is something really weird happening here, right? And in a lot of cases, the dogs just can't even find a scent, which is really strange. I just want to point this out. I know bloodhounds aren't infallible, but when you have items that belong to the person you want to track, and where they were hours ago,
the dog can pick up their scent right there.
You show them the scent, the dog runs into the field where they were, picks up the scent, and bam, they're off.
Yeah.
When that doesn't happen, something really weird is going on. Okay.
Didn't we talk to somebody who like works with tracking dogs? I'm pretty sure on the podcast we got to ask somebody about them. Didn't we?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, this subject goes way back. Remember, was it Thomas Spriggs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spriggs did some amazing work. Yeah. He, if you guys are interested in that
old school Snake Bros topic.
Episode, look all the way back in the archives for Thomas Spriggs, because he basically read through Paulides' books and then went on this. He went putting map points all over the place and finding patterns.
Yeah.
And he was drawing these big ovals and being like, look, this thing is basically doing a circle
for a certain period of time. And then it switches to this period of time over here. And
really interesting analytical work on the,
that was really cool.
Yeah. And one day I'd love to have, Dave Paulides on too, just to talk to him.
Yeah.
Like
we met him. He was a nice guy.
Yeah. 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 He was a nice guy. I actually bought these books in person from him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because I had 2 of them and I was like, I need all of the rest of them. So I bought a big stack.
Well, I have one case that missing child case that I saw in my news feed. I didn't actually bookmark it, but I didn't know we were even going to be doing this, but a kid got lost in a cornfield.
I saw that.
Okay.
And they found him with you could see him moving around in there with the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I started thinking about that, and then I started looking at the tall grass, and I was like, dang, I need to mow my field. Because seriously, you can't, I don't know, I can just imagine, these massive, some of the cornfields around here are just so huge.
Yeah.
The kid wander out there and
that was the crazy thing about that video, because you see the kid and then they zoom out and you're like, oh my God, that field is enormous. Yeah. There was another one that I just saw recently too, where it was showing that they found a 10-year-old girl, she's curled up on the ground, basically sleeping, lost, and they saw her with infrared from a drone. Dude was flying a drone with infrared, locates the girl, and then you could see the searchers come in because he's telling them, I found her. They come in and she stands up and they pick her up or whatever, so they found her alive with this infrared technology. I wonder if drones are going to be able to help. Yeah, infrared is awesome.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Yeah.
Which is, again,
you can get them to places you can't go, and you can hike so far and then and
exactly.
Look with infrared. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's take a break and then let's get into the book.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
We talked our way through the first segment. Okay.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent Podcast, a missing 411 book report.
That's right.
Haven't done a book report in a while. What do you think? 3? It's a 3-parter, maybe?
Maybe, yeah. This is a huge book. I don't know. We'll see. I've got a bunch of cases marked and I haven't gotten that far in.
You never know with a book report.
Yeah. So this is Missing 411 North America and Beyond. Stories of people who have disappeared in remote locations in North America and 5 other countries. So I will put links to purchase this book in the show notes. You guys, like I said, I'm only going to be reading through select cases. There's a lot of cases in this book. So if you want the full impact, which is where as you begin to read through, you begin to see the connections and the patterns. So every time I read one of these, the first few cases, you're like, yeah, that's a little strange, but you could explain it away. That one's also a little strange, but the farther in you get, you're like, okay, a pattern begins to develop. Inevitably,
you start to get into his profiling.
Yeah.
Understand his profile.
Right. And so then you're just reading the case, you're reading the points of the next case and you're like, oh my God, this is weird how this is happening,
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want the full impact of what's really going on, and if you want to try, make an attempt to figure out with your own mind what you think might be happening. Because I can tell you, after reading a bunch of these books, I have no clue what's really going on.
Well, if you haven't done that, I'm with you. I've never done it. I've only sat here and listened to these cases. So I cannot claim to understand the profile.
Yeah. So I really recommend you buy the books. And if you're interested in any of the cases that I'm going to go through here, you can go to the show notes, find the link to purchase the book, and read it for yourself. And then you can go and look for, other resources. Some of these cases are really old. You might be able to find other articles or some of the articles that he referenced. You can find additional information on some of them. Like Soraya did that with us last time we talked about Missing 411 on his episode. Okay, on his show. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about here is this is an old one, 1950. Tommy Jenkins went missing in April 4th, 1950 from Fort Lewis, Washington. Is that right? May from Fort Lewis, Washington. He was 2 or 3 years old. There's discrepancies in the reports, he says. Okay, so Fort Lewis, so this happened on a military base. 33,000 acre fort, housed 6,000 soldiers in 1950. It's on the southeast side of American Lake with Interstate Highway 5 bisecting the property. The region of the fort that borders the lake area is very wild and rugged and undeveloped. Tommy lived on Fort Lewis with his father and mother in non-commissioned housing. Reports vary on Tommy's age, starting anywhere from between 2 up to 3 years old. But on May 4th, around noon, Tommy was outside playing with the neighbor's Irish setter, a dog named Lassie. This is Lassie, of course. This is another thing you'll notice is that there's canines involved with these, right? So somebody goes, a child or a person goes missing with their dog, and the searchers are looking, sometimes for a week or more, and they don't find anything. And then right at the end of the search period, the dog just shows up, and they can never get it to lead them to the person. You know, it's like the dog just finally appears, and sometimes it's been fed and it's in good condition. Other times it looks a little hungry, right? But a lot of times they never locate the person, even though the dog comes back.
That's weird.
Now, on those, in those cases, you can imagine, well, the person fell, they injured themselves, the dog wouldn't leave them, but then they eventually die, and then the dog leaves. But I don't know. I don't. This is one of the reasons why I like doing this with Kyle. Kyle's owned dogs recently, and he also has children. So I have like your perspective on
expert witness.
Yeah, he's an expert. He's an expert here. So like some of these things with the kids, I'll be like, well, do you think a kid could do this? And Kyle's like, yeah, yep, yes, they can disappear in 6 seconds.
It's terrifying.
You start looking for them, and then when you finally find them, they're miles away.
That's never happened.
Okay, so what do you think? We went, the dog you had, Mally, we would take her to these really remote places with us, and she usually would kind of stay around where we were,
She would try to stay around, yeah.
But if you fell and injured yourself, and maybe you were knocked unconscious or whatever, what do you think she would do? Do you think she would have stuck around you even up until where you died? And then when you died, would she leave or she'd just sit there?
I have no idea, but I think she would have stayed with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She would have gotten hungry. If you'd have been alive for days, she would have been getting hungry. But maybe she could hunt for herself. I don't know.
Yeah, but you know how she was if I left the job site.
Yeah. 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 She'd freak out.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were times when like she would be in the car with me and Kyle's in front of me driving a machine and she's looking at the machine and she's like, so I'm like,
oh, pups.
I'm like, Mouse. Yeah, he's right there.
My peppers. Good dog. Okay. I didn't really discover who that dog was until I took her to work every day. That's really when I was like, man.
Yeah, she was great.
Man's best friend.
Yeah. Okay, so Tommy was outside playing with the neighbor's dog, Lassie. One soldier reported he saw the boy and the dog playing at a gravel quarry not far from the residence, but this was not confirmed. But when Tommy didn't come home for lunch, authorities were called and a search was initiated. So the commander of the fort basically pulled every available soldier to look for the kid. 6,000 men and women covering every inch of the base looking for this boy. Like probably within hours he had it because he just put out an
6,
order.
000.
Bam, everybody there.
Yeah.
Come outside right now.
Yeah. Done.
Focusing on the area near the gravel pit, the region near the beach and the water, and they found nothing. He put helicopters and planes into the air, nothing.
Wow.
3 different bloodhounds were brought to the base, attempted to pick up his scent, nothing. And again, this is weird. His house is right there. His parents have items of his clothing. They can give them to the dogs. They know where he was.
Yeah.
Nothing. No scent track, right? It's weird. On the 3rd day of searching, and in an area previously searched numerous times, searchers heard sounds near the beach, and the men fought their way through very heavy brush. This is also common, where it appears like the person who went missing just plowed their way through some unbelievably thick thickets.
Yeah.
For some reason, right? So very heavy brush, and they find Tommy and Lassie playing on the beach of American Lake, alive and well,
3 days
later.
I knew it. Those damn kids don't need to eat every 2 hours.
So, an article in the Saskatoon Star-Phoenix on May 8th of 1950 had the following about Tommy being found. Major Artie N. Heap, Fort Lewis's provost marshal, said Saturday that 3-year-old Tommy Jenkins, who had been missing for 2 days, had been found alive and well. He had apparently been kidnapped, Major Heap said, and returned to the point where he was picked up.
Wow.
Later in the same article, there is another quote from the Army official. No 3-year-old boy could have survived 2 nights in the open with the weather we have had in the past 48 hours. Because during the time he had been missing, temperatures were down to the low 40s and there was rainfall. So yeah, a little kid is not going to be outside in 40 degrees with rainfall for 2 or 3 days. So Sergeant Jenkins, this is the father, attempted to question his son about his disappearance, didn't get clear answers.
No.
The boy did state he slept in areas where there were no homes. And he stated that he had fallen into a creek with the dog, but both him and the dog were dry. And again, it had been raining. So he claims he fell into a creek. They had rainstorms during the time he was missing, but him and the dog were didn't seem to show any signs of having gotten wet. Other statements made by Army officials confirming that they did not believe that Tommy had been in the area where he had been found for the previous 48 hours. They also confirmed that the boy was in too good of a physical condition to have been out in the elements for the entire time he was missing. The Independent Record of Helena, Montana, ran an article on May 6 about Tommy being found. Reporters attempted to question Mrs. Jenkins about Tommy and how he could be found in such phenomenal condition, and she stated, "I can't understand it. I just don't understand it." So yeah, this is another weirdness of some of these cases is that sometimes it's a body, sometimes the person is found alive in places that have been previously searched, and the searchers are just like they weren't there.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're in too good of a condition to have been out the whole time. Or maybe it's because it was Lassie. He had Lassie with him. Doesn't Lassie was always finding missing kids?
I thought you were suggesting that Lassie was like a shapeshifter.
Whoa.
And Lassie took him somewhere.
Well, man. Yeah. If alien shapeshifters are taking the place of some people's dogs.
Yeah. Lassie just showed up last year.
Yeah.
You know,
great dog. Very intelligent. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so the next case, this one is Cody Shei, 1986. This one is, let me check this one is April. Yeah, so April 27th, 1986, 2:30 p.m.-ish, Blue Mountains in Oregon. Age of disappearance, 6 years old. So the city of Wallowa in Oregon is at the far northeastern section of the state. It's 26 miles from Washington and 20 miles from Idaho in the Blue Mountains. The elevation is about 2,948 feet with mountain peaks on its perimeter that exceed 5,000 feet. On April 27th, Cody went on a family picnic into the Blue Mountains. Him and his 10-year-old sister, Carrie, were playing a game in the forest called Explorers. So here you go. This is a game where the kids run off in separate directions into the forest. At approximately 12:30 p.m., the family couldn't find Cody. So Cody's mom was the lone adult in the group, as Cody's dad was in China on business. The group searched until 2:30 p.m. and then they called law enforcement. And the United States Forest Service, a county sheriff, and the state police all responded. Within 2 hours of the call for assistance, there were 2 helicopters in the air looking for Cody, along with bloodhounds on the ground. They had equestrian teams that had responded and were able to cover huge distances within short periods of time. Throughout the first night, searchers stayed on the ground looking for the boy, yelling, calling for him, no response. They were challenged in their search because almost immediately after he was reported missing, rain started to fall in the mountains and the rain continued through the night. Searchers were told that Cody was 3 feet 10 inches tall and weighed 40 pounds, so not a large boy. At 7:30 a.m., Cody emerged from the wilderness by arriving at the home of Beverly Hansen, a resident on the outskirts of Wallowa. He asked for directions to his grandfather's ranch, and the woman stated that it was too far away, and she invited him in and called the sheriff. An April 30th, 1986 article in the Beaver Times had the following. A 6-year-old boy walked overnight at least 18 miles to safety through the wilderness of northeastern Oregon while searchers on horseback combed the rugged terrain after he got lost on a picnic. Later in the same article was the following. Cody told his mother he climbed into a tree once during the night, afraid that he was being followed by coyotes. An April 29th article in the Hutchinson News had additional information. His mother said the boy told her he hid during the night from a motorcycle and a helicopter. There wasn't a helicopter out there that night. He must have been hallucinating, she said. Cody was taken to the hospital for observation and was found to be in good health, considering his journey. Okay, so Paulides' summary here says, okay, it is claimed that Cody walked 18 miles through the rugged Blue Mountains in 15 hours. That's a serious trek. He stated...
What's normal? I mean, I don't,
Yeah, well,
no context for that area, right?
Right.
What's normal for a grown person in those mountains to hike a mile?
I guess that's a good question.
Off trail, assuming.
Bushwhacking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so he stated that the boy stated he stopped and climbed a tree because he thought coyotes were following him, and he hid for some period of time from a helicopter and motorcycle that were not there. So he didn't walk nonstop because he was hiding and climbing. Walking that distance for a 6-year-old boy under any condition is a phenomenal feat. Yeah. But to do it in the Blue Mountains and walk all the way to a residence is unbelievable. If you couple this story with what Cody claims he saw, it makes you question what really happened to him. So Paulides says, in my years of researching missing people, there is only one other story in the western United States that comes remotely close to the distances Cody covered in 15 hours. And this is the story of Keith Parkins. He disappeared in 1952, just 90 miles southwest of Wallowa in Ritter, Oregon. He was 2 years old and covered 12 miles of mountains in 19 hours and was found collapsed in a creek bed.
No freaking way.
So Paulides says he wrote about Keith's story in the Missing 411 Western United States. I think it is highly coincidental that two young boys disappeared in close proximity to each other and were able to cover vast distances that no other child anywhere in the Western United States has ever accomplished.
Like a 2-year-old, though, has just learned to walk.
Right.
They're not.
Yeah. I think we covered this case.
They're not bushwhacking very well.
Yeah. Well, Cody was 6.
I know, but the other case of this
Keith is 2.
Yeah.
So
he's not going 12 miles.
Right. But is a 6-year-old going to go 18 miles?
That's crazy.
In 15 hours?
I don't think Soul's ever walked 18 miles anywhere.
It's and it's more than a mile an hour. I mean, you got to keep going. Yeah. You can't, or you're running. And you're bushwhacking, right? And this is not like you're walking in the desert. You're pushing through trees and crossing creeks.
But I will say this, when kids of that age, they don't really have a good concept of time. Mm-hmm. So if they like what they're doing, they haven't been doing it for very long, but it's been 2 hours.
Yeah.
If they don't like it, then it's
after 2 minutes, they're like, why?
Yeah, they've been doing it forever. This? And it's you got to do this for 5 minutes. So yeah. So if he hid in a tree from coyotes,
I'm still like that.
I'm just thinking about how he hid for a while.
Yeah.
From a helicopter and a motorcycle. Could have been 30 seconds. They just don't.
Yeah.
I was hiding.
Yeah.
It's you were there for 30 seconds.
Right. And he could have climbed a tree and climbed right back down.
Yeah. So but I guess he could have stayed up there. I don't know. I'm just saying. But
imagine so he goes missing around 2:00 in the afternoon. And then at 7 a.m, he comes walking up to this woman.
Yeah, that's impressive.
So he had to walk most of the night.
Yeah.
In the dark, right?
Yeah. And I mean, usually also this is the time 5, they start really getting afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years old, they start imagining like all these animals.
So he's afraid of coyotes. Yeah.
He's afraid of coyotes and he's just booking it.
Yeah.
This is a thing I've noticed with my kids. I don't know if this is everybody's kids, but I'm sure they get this from watching cartoons and stuff like that. But like wolves, dude.
Yeah.
Number one enemy of children. Like both of my kids are like, wolves. Like they're so terrified of wolves. They've never seen one.
I've seen a lot of people say that's that there's something genetic there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's like they love dogs.
Hundreds of thousands of years, wolves was their main enemy.
They have this love-hate relationship with dogs. They love dogs, but then there's a dog and they're like,
yeah.
And then as soon as they find out the dog's nice, they're like, I want the dog. So but then, I was walking with Lila the other night. She was like, she took a late nap and she wakes up at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, looks like I'm going to be up a while. So like at 12 a.m. in the morning, she wants to go on a walk. So we go on a walk out here and she's just constantly asking me about wolves. And I'm like, no, there's no wolves here.
You missed a prime trolling opportunity there.
I was like, but there are like hundreds of coyotes.
Yeah. Excellent.
But yeah, they're terrified of wolves. It's weird. It has to be from TV shows they're watching. I don't know.
Could be.
Like in the cartoons or something.
Yeah.
The wolves are chasing the kids or something.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean,
so yeah, the kid goes out, it gets late, and then he starts running from coyotes and he makes it 18 miles throughout the night while periodically hiding.
Yeah.
So I can understand that as a motivator to just they don't have their parents, he doesn't have his parents to run to.
Yeah.
But God, that's still incredible that,
Yeah, and I guess, kids can seem like they have boundless energy too, but don't they hit walls and just pass out as well? So it's like, it's really interesting that he could just...
But it's like, I don't think I even know what my kids are fully capable of because they don't get pushed to the ultimate. Like, I don't even know what I'm capable of, right? We've never been put in a situation like life or death like that.
Right.
So I don't know what they're capable of in extreme situations.
Yeah. So those are good points. So this is what, so that's what's interesting about this case and many of the other ones. You can say, all right, if we take this case by itself, you could explain it as an extreme outlier. Mm-hmm. The kid got really lucky and, he was sufficiently terrified, but not so terrified that in other words, he makes it all the way to this person's house, right? It's just like another possible explanation is that he was dropped there.
That something else happened. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, he was hiding from a motorcycle and a helicopter. Those things didn't exist, but, he could have decided that there was a helicopter searching for him. He hears some wind whipping in the trees and he's like, oh my God, that's a helicopter. But a motorcycle is a little strange. You're in the mountains. So that at least implies he heard some weird noises and thought, I guess, I don't know. Kids are also pretty fascinated with animals, right? They're not going to confuse the sound of a horse.
They're usually, I think
they're not going to think a horse footsteps are a helicopter, right?
How old is he? Not a 7-year-old or I don't think so. I mean, Soul recognized more animal sounds than I did at that age. But I mean, they're all different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the other thing is you sometimes you wonder, so this was in 1986. I wonder what he's like now, if he could remember anything, if you could contact these people and be like, hey man, so you took this amazing trek when you were 6. You got any memories of that? And you'd be like, bro, the helicopter.
I wonder if he's a UFO fanatic now.
Oh yeah, that could be interesting. So just to finish off here, Paulides says, to gauge the unusual nature of Cody's feat, in the book Lost Person Behavior by Robert Coaster, On page 135, he outlines distances children typically travel and makes recommendations for search and rescue teams. He states that a 4 to 6 year old child will be found 95% of the time in a mountainous region at a distance of 3.7 miles or less from the point they were last seen. Cody traveled more than 4 times the distance quoted in the book and accomplished this in just 15 hours.
Impressive kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or he was taken there.
Yeah, something else happened.
Yeah. Dropped off at the house. How did he beeline it for somebody's house,
Right.
too?
Yeah. Okay. So this next case is an adult, Richard R. Lee, 47 years old, disappeared 2004, September 11th.
Wow.
In Washington at a place called Kolchak Lake. So this is in the Cascades, about 2 miles northwest of Mount Stewart, 15 miles south of Lake Wenatchee, and 10 miles west of the town of Wenatchee. This area, Wenatchee. This area of the Cascades has more people that have disappeared and never been found than any other location in the region.
Whoa.
This lake sits in a bowl that has no trees around its outside and is located at the 5,800-foot level. The region is extremely rough and rugged. On September 9th, 2004, Richard traveled from his residence in Hobart to the area of the lake for 2 days of hiking and camping. Okay, so maybe I am reading this one where I tell you he fills out the permits. Because he completed a 2-day camping permit, filed it, walked to the lake. At some point during those days, Richard contacted his brother while he was on a ridge line and indicated all was fine, just wanted to say hello. So he climbs up to a ridge line where he gets service.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the last anybody heard of Richard. On September 11th, he hadn't returned. He was an extremely experienced and well-prepared camper, and even though he didn't arrive at his residence as planned, this didn't immediately strike a note of emergency. Mrs. Lee eventually believed that something was wrong and reports him missing on the 15th. And the same day searching started.
She waited a while.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like, he goes camping. He thinks, well, I'll come back on the 11th, but 4 days later, she starts to get worried.
Yeah.
In some cases, they mention like, well, sometimes they go camping and they're like, I'll be back on the 11th. And they're a couple of days later and they're like, yeah, it took me longer to hike out than I thought, something like that. But she waits 4 days and she starts getting worried. Yeah. Or there's something else going on in the background here. Okay. The first group into the area was the Chelan County Mountain Rescue Team. They found his vehicle parked at the trailhead. So then they were flown into the lake and started to search the area. They decided to focus on Enchantment Lake, Kolchak Lake, and Lake Stewart. And the searching didn't go easily. They were advised that he liked to hike off trail and camp in areas where others would not. His campsite was not found immediately. They had to trek cross country much of the time in an effort to locate his camp, which they did eventually find. His tent, his rolled out sleeping bag, and food in a bag pulled into a tree so bears couldn't get to it were eventually located 500 feet off a trail near the lake, near Kolchak Lake. They stated the camp looked like he had just walked away from it. Everything in the tent was neat, as though he was ready to come back to it. They searched for 4 days and never found any evidence of where he might have gone from his camp. So this is interesting. Paulides says, in a strange twist to this story, I was one of the speakers at the 2012 National Association of Search and Rescue Association Conference at Harvey's Lake Tahoe in June 2012. Now, see, I had told people multiple times, like, he spoke at this National Search and Rescue thing, and I've seen video of it, but the video is gone. Nobody can find it online anymore, but I had seen him speaking at this conference before. Remember I told Soraya, and he's like, where did you find the video? I'm like, I don't remember. I saw this video. I don't know where I saw it. But I know he spoke at this
Go
conference.
sailing. You'll find it on the high seas.
Yeah, you may have to sail the high seas. So Paulides says, I spoke about a variety of circumstances related to the study, and then explained many of the incidents where people were found far outside normal search and rescue parameters. And shortly after he returned from the conference, he received a very interesting series of emails from search and rescue professional from Chelan County that was part of the search for Richard. He explained that this was one of the only incidents where he felt uncomfortable just to be in the area of Richard's tent. and he couldn't explain it. He stated that it was an extreme effort to find the tent because it was obvious that he was traveling off trail and they knew he wouldn't be in a standard campground. But the searchers stated that the campsite that Richard had chosen had an eerie feeling. So this is just interesting, right? It appeared like somebody just walked away from it minutes earlier. A sort of Mary Celeste sort of thing. Like there's a dinner plate, the pot on the fire or whatever. Yeah. He said he would normally never write about something like this, but in his many years of experience, he had always heard of others having strange feelings in the woods, but he stated that this was the first time that he personally had felt something was definitely wrong with this area. I find that interesting because, sometimes you have other subtle senses that sort of warn you about something. I've had that happen, and, sometimes you're in the woods and you're just like,
I felt like something was wrong in the woods before.
Yeah. And you're like, I should not be here.
I should walk faster.
Yes.
I have no explanation for it, but yes, that's happened.
Do you remember, were you with me when we climbed up it was one of the jobs we had.
Barbara's?
Yeah. We climbed up there and found those giant nests.
I wasn't there, but I've seen it. I saw them. Yeah. Those were very strange. I've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah. Standing there and I was like, I should leave.
All that flattened, padding underneath the cedar, and you're just like, this is a really old tree, and then there's just like, what is that stuff? Yeah. Somebody collected all that here, and it's all smashed down.
Right. It was some kind of oval-shaped padded nest, and I was like, it's big enough to lay down in.
Yeah.
And I got a really weird sensation on the top of that hill. So that was one of them. But okay, so this is interesting. But anyway, so back to his summary here. So volunteers from Chelan, King, Yakima, and Kittitas counties all volunteered on the search for Richard. Helicopters and planes went into the air in an attempt to locate some trace of him. Nothing was ever found. This area of the Cascade is treacherous if you're alone. One of the last items that the searcher wrote to me about was the feeling of the United States Forest Service towards missing people. He stated that people disappear in the Cascades under very strange conditions, and the USFS probably doesn't want to talk about it. And in Richard's case, the searcher stated that the belongings that were left behind and the neatness of the tent and the fact that it almost appeared as if he had left everything of value in the tent didn't make sense. He made it clear there were no indications that Richard committed suicide. It was just a very, very odd disappearance. So it's interesting.
I hadn't considered suicide. That's interesting.
Yeah, some of these cases, a possible explanation is the person is like, I'm going to go out in the woods.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of done with life.
Yeah.
And I want to end my life in this beautiful place.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole,
that forest. Yeah.
Is it like Akiba? I can't remember what it's called. There's a suicide forest in Japan. It's famous for it.
Yeah.
But maybe something else is happening there too. Who knows?
It's odd that the whole never found thing.
Right.
That's really what's strange about it.
Right.
Like, how did you do that?
Yeah. And remember that this is the other thing. The Charles McCullough case, this famous one from Crater Lake. This one is, where they found the pants with some bones in the socks. And they were kind of like accordioned down.
Yeah.
And he was miles and miles and miles from where he was taking pictures of the lake when he went missing. And he went missing in the middle of winter. There's no way he walked to this spot and died there because they had to take horses to get out there in the summer. Right? So it does seem like sometimes people are just taken. And this is the other thing I thought when I'm reading this. I wonder if this is still a natural phenomenon. And I don't mean an animal. I mean, if this is an outlier of physics, that would be really interesting.
Like people...
Something about space-time. I don't know. Like, how is it that you can... because sometimes they find these people...
The problem I have with that, and I've always had with this idea of people just like vanishing, and how does physics know that you are an entity? How does it know that your boundaries are on the outside of your pants?
Oh, you mean, why doesn't it leave the... Oh.
You see what I'm saying?
Oh, why does it take the pants with?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, your boundaries are on the outside of your pants and shoes. No, like, how does it? That's what I'm trying to get at.
I don't mean a form of teleportation. I mean, I don't even know what you would call it. But some of these cases, it's like people they're like, well, I looked around and there's just no one around me, and there should be people around me, and then they're lost for a week. right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly they're like, oh, now I recognize where I am.
Yeah.
And yes, that can happen. You can get lost. You're sort of walking along. And this is what I guess you imagine when you hear this. Well, you're walking along, you're not paying attention, you're looking for arrowheads, whatever, and you look up and you're like, holy shit, I have no idea where I am.
Yeah.
But you sort of recognize the woods, right?
You're not talking about the person's form being transported somewhere.
No, I'm like, they get out of phase, but there's still woods there. I don't know what you would call it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How does all of them get out of phase? That's really
because because out of phase is there's still stuff there, right? I don't know how you would explain it. Like they shift over into a slightly parallel dimension for a little while.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would describe it.
Yeah.
They don't. It's it's not like you move into a like an empty space. You move into like you're 0.3 seconds behind the rest of the universe for a second there, and you're slightly in the past. I have no idea.
I know what you're saying, but I'm trying to point out why I can't wrap my brain around how that can happen, because like there's where are the physical boundaries of the area that gets 3 seconds behind?
Yeah.
Is it the whole?
There's like a large sphere that moves around with you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. And then the sphere moves away, floats up into the air, and suddenly you're back in the.
Yeah.
I don't know. But this is the thing. Remember again, and I connect these to these old Fae stories. There's a weird time thing with them.
Yeah.
You go hang out with them, you have a drink, and you come back, and it's been 100 years, whatever. So it's like something gets shifted, and I don't know what that something is, and I don't know how it's shifting.
Yeah,
we just have to use these words to describe it. I don't know, but it's strange, and I think that so. I guess what I'm trying to do here, and I'm doing a terrible job of it, is like, let's just get away from the idea that aliens or Bigfoot or anything is abducting these people and saying they're experiencing some weird natural phenomena, and this is why they reappear in a place that was searched.
Yeah.
Not because something put them back there, but because they drop back out of whatever weird natural phenomena. Some bubble of weird space-time moves through the earth. I don't know what it is. Because then you want to ask questions, well, why doesn't it pick up all the searchers that are out there? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it does. There's cases in here where everybody goes to search for somebody. They eventually find the person, but then one of the searchers is lost, and they never find this guy. I
had a really strange experience once where I felt like no one could see me.
Oh, yeah?
So I kind of, I just remembered that, and it's like, that was really freaking weird. And the situation I was in was already really weird. And then I end up around this crowd of people, and I'm like, how you doing? And they're just like,
no one's acknowledging you. Yeah. Okay. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, was I even visible to them? That's
right.
not, what I mean?
You entered the.
That was weird.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know.
But I will say that the thing that makes me think that this is not like some kind of natural phenomenon on some bubble of weird space-time that's coming at us out of space and passing through the earth, and somebody gets caught in it out in the wilderness. Because you would expect that to happen in cities too. Maybe it does. I don't know. But the other thing is that people seem to get fascinated by something too. Sometimes there's evidence that, there's a bunch of people walking on the trail, and one of the people on the trail looks off into the woods and goes, and just kind of wanders off for no reason and just vanishes. There's a case in here, and I know we need to take a break. There's a case in here of a group of people that are coming back down from a mountain after they went up to scatter the ashes of a friend who had died, and they wanted to be on this mountaintop, and they were coming back down. One of the people who was there turned and just started walking down a different trail, and everybody in the group was like, "Hey, where are you going?" And they said that she looked at them and kept walking and didn't say anything, but stared at them the whole time she was walking down. And then she was never found, right?
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
Next case. We'll be right back.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Second half of the show. Missing 411 North America and Beyond by David Paulides. Referencing through the book here. Remember, if you want to get it, which you should, if you're interested in this subject, I will put links in the show notes for where to go to buy the book. Okay, next case. Marcela Rameski. This is July 1st, 1950, another old case. Mount Rainier National Park in Washington.
Didn't you go there?
I didn't go to Rainier. Oh. Yeah. I think they went to Shasta, didn't they?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And Shasta has there's a lot of missing cases from Shasta in this book too. Okay. Mrs. K. Rameski and her daughter, Marcela, age 4, took a trip from their Fairfax, Washington home to Chenowes Falls. What's that? Chenowes. Probably Chinois, something? I don't know. Chenowes Falls inside Mount Rainier National Park for a picnic. At approximately 5 p.m., Marcela vanished. Mrs. Rameski notified National Park authorities and a search was immediately commenced. So the Park Service committed 50 rangers to the search, along with 2 bloodhounds. The canines were given her scent, and they could not track her. The location where she vanished is approximately 2 miles from the base of the mountain and located on the northwest side of the park. The Park Service received volunteer assistance from many people in the area. At 9 a.m. the day following her disappearance, Jack and Donald Noel were walking uphill from the falls looking for the girl when they happened to see a small bundle on the ground. A July 4th, 1950 article in the Kingsport News has the following details. A blonde 4-year-old youngster was found sitting high on the slopes of Mount Rainier Monday morning after wandering 16 hours in the wilderness. Where the National Park searchers and bloodhounds had failed, 2 volunteers find her on the slopes of the mountain. Later in the same article, it describes her condition. Her legs bore long scratches from crawling through the underbrush. So people who've read previous books recognize that these types of scratches are routinely found on kids that go missing in mountain settings. Yeah, they'll have these long scratches that seem to go up and down, you know. Now you can imagine if the kid's on all fours that they might have long scratches going down their calves, but it seems like you would have lateral scratches, and you might have, so if you're crawling, they might start at your shoulders and go down your body, you know, but it's interesting. Like if you're walking through them, all of the scratches should be going this way. Yeah.
Crawling or sliding or whatever.
Sliding, yeah, you're right. Sliding. If you're sliding feet first or whatever through them, you get long scratches. Okay, so in a different article in the Nevada Journal tells an entirely different story. A ranger said the girl, Marcela, was in good condition with no visible cuts or abrasions. But was taken to a doctor's office I guess for observation.
Cuts and abrasions, maybe not scratches.
Yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, Paulides just notes this is correct. It seems an entirely different story was relayed to the public by a national park ranger. Later in the Kingsport News article, there is a section about the girl's clothing and a statement from the mother. Her mother said that the girl had apparently gone through her regular nightly routine regardless of the discomforting circumstances because her dress was on backwards and the laces of her shoes were awry, crossed every which way. This is weird. So this is the question. Do you think the kid, like, they're staying out all night and they're like, okay, time to get undressed to go to bed, takes her clothes and shoes off, and then in the morning gets up, puts the clothes and shoes back on and puts the dress on backwards and laces the shoes up wrong?
Seems plausible. 4-year-old? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah, they put stuff on backwards inside out. And
right. But do they remove their clothing when they're outside?
Yeah.
In the mountains?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
But she's wearing a dress. I mean, it's obviously not cold.
Yeah, it was July.
Yeah. Yeah, they take their clothes off when they get hot.
Yeah. But I do find it interesting. This is like...
He stayed overnight. She did her whole bedtime routine. Gotta do the bedtime routine, Mom says.
Yeah. Gets a stick. Brush the teeth.
Yeah.
But okay, so people need to understand that on Mount Rainier during a July night, temperatures can easily get down into the high 30s and low 40s. So I doubt the girl is going to remove her clothes and then put them back on. Again, this is an attempt to explain the unexplainable. So Paulides is basically saying like he is doubting that the girl would remove her clothes because it's too cold, even in the middle of the summer, because on the mountain it gets cold. Okay, so summary here. Several aspects of this story may not seem outwardly unusual if you haven't read the other books, but this girl walked over 2 miles straight up toward the top of the mountain. The vast majority of missing children walk downhill when lost, not uphill. It's apparent from the description given by the mother that somehow, somewhere, the clothes and shoes came off Marcela, another common fact among many children who vanish. Children who go missing in the wilds of North America are often found with serious scratches, abrasions, and gashes, but apparently the Park Service didn't want the public to know about this. As Marcela walked further uphill away from her mother, the temperature dropped, the air became thinner, and survivability became more difficult. So Mrs. Rameski was very lucky to get her daughter back alive. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, like, he's pulling from, again, this book of lost person behavior, right? So this person has gone through a bunch of statistics. I think I've thought about this a bunch with going through this book again, and like I think there is some, it's not quite survivorship bias, but there must be bias in this data because the data that he's working on are when they found something of the person.
Yeah.
So he's like, in 95% of the cases where the person is found or their remains are found, you locate them within, you see what I'm saying? It isn't, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you can't take it as 95% of the kids who go missing will be within a 3.7 mile radius of where they went lost.
Only the ones that are
Those
found.
are the ones where their remains were located or they were found alive. So there may be some kind of, a bias in the data here.
Yeah.
That's basically like, if they've gone outside the search area, the likelihood of them being discovered is very low. Basically is what I think is another way to look at that data. And the idea that they mostly walk downhill, again, these are the ones that are found. The ones that are found have walked downhill. And could that be because adults are making the assumption that they're going to walk downhill, so that's where they look? I don't know. I guess when you're, I don't know enough about doing statistical analysis of things to say, but it just seems interesting to me that like the only way he can have this data is when something of the person was located, whether it was a corpse or an item of their clothing, bones or themselves, and then you have to take all that information and be like, where were they found from where they went missing, and then so there's a bias in there, and that is when something of them was discovered.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you, if you were trying to do statistics on the behavior of people who get lost, how do you put in information of people who were never located?
I think really what you have to do is you have to consider the entire body of missing people and make that 100%. Yeah. Then you take the ones that were found and then you make the percentage that, so it'll be a lower percentage.
Yeah.
Rather than saying 95% of the ones who are found in lower places, it would be like a much smaller percentage.
Yeah.
Because
so maybe
you're including all the ones that weren't found.
Yeah, you're right. So maybe he did that. And I'm just, making some kind of assumption.
I don't know. Yeah.
I guess I need to get this book, Lost Person Behavior or whatever it's called. I think
that would be a good thing to know, just in case, somebody goes missing and Russ is like, listen, we need to go downhill.
Hopefully he's not a 5%er.
Yeah. And stay within 3 miles.
Yeah.
Wait, how old is he? Oh, okay. We can go 5 miles.
Yeah. You can go 5 miles within 18 hours. You got to go farther out. Yeah. I'll try to find this book because I think it would be good to know this because if the guy's a good statistician or whatever, he would include ones that were never located. And he'd say, so if he's saying 95%, that means that all of them,
all missing persons.
Yeah. Okay. Next case is Eric Lewis. So this is an adult. Missing July 1st, 2010 at Gibraltar Ledge on Mount Rainier in Washington. Age of disappearance, 57. So this one's interesting because this man is an extremely experienced mountain climber. Okay. And Paulides says, he doesn't usually write about climbers who vanish because they're often in incredibly rugged areas. Mm-hmm. And especially if they're noobs, they probably fell and they've disappeared into a crevasse and they're just never located. But this is a special case. So Eric was a climbing junkie, enjoyed travel and adventure. Graduated from the University of Missouri at Columbia with a degree in fine arts, with an emphasis in photography. He lived in Duval, Washington, near the Cascade Mountains, and loved the hiking in the area. He called his mom in Omaha every Saturday.
Good man.
His climbing adventures had taken him to Nepal, to New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, and he had conquered Mount Rainier summit 10 times. He knew the mountain and its challenges and was attempting a different route through the Gibraltar Ledge. He was climbing with experienced mountaineers Don Storm Jr. and Trevor Lane. A mishap should never have happened. But early in the morning of July 1st, 2010, Eric and his friends started to climb the mountain. The day appeared to have great weather. They were not loaded with heavy equipment or bulky clothing. Everything was fine with the climb, as Don led the team and stopped near 14,000 feet. So this is way up there. Don waited as Trevor then made his way up the route. The weather at this point was starting to turn bad. Winds were picking up. The snow was starting to blow. Trevor made it to Don's position, and then Eric hooked onto the rope and started to ascend. Don could catch glimpses of Eric on the rope, and then suddenly the rope went limp. After a few minutes, Don started to pull on the rope. He pulled up a loop knot at the end, but no climbing harness or carabiner. Don and Trevor were now in blustery weather where it was difficult to see even 5 feet, and they believed that Eric must have unhooked but couldn't understand why he did it and why he didn't stay with the group. So they waited.
How would a loop knot go through your whatever he was using as a self-belay device? Like,
I don't know.
You can't get a knot through those. So he must have
unhooked. Yeah. So they waited out the storm and then descended to the point where Eric would have removed himself from the rope. So from 14,000 feet-ish, they went down 200 feet to 13,800, and they found a snow cave that probably was used by Eric. Then at 13,600 feet, they found his backpack, snow shovel, and climbing harness.
So he took his harness off.
Meaning he must have taken off the harness and taken shelter in the cave. Now, this part I didn't understand.
Why do they assume that?
I don't know.
Because the snow cave was up higher, right?
Yeah. 200 feet above where they found his stuff. So did he make the snow cave and then drop his stuff and it fell? I don't know.
So yeah, snow cave. It's a shelter constructed by certain animals or human mountain climbers.
Yeah. You use your shovel, you dig a hole, you hide in it until the wind is done. Yeah, because it's...
Thermal properties similar to an igloo.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was nobody in the area of Eric's gear, and the snowstorm had wiped out any footprints. Don and Trevor descended to 10,000 feet, contacted climbing rangers to report the disappearance. Rangers immediately went to the location, and in fact got to the summit but didn't find him. The Park Service committed 50 searchers, 2 helicopters, and commercial guides in the search for Eric. After almost 4 grueling days of searching, the climber was never found. So in summary, Eric was probably in the top 1% of the most experienced climbers to tackle mountains in North America. He was an internationally accomplished climber who had worked under some of the best guides in the world. He had extensive experience on Rainier and knew how to survive complicated situations. It's almost unbelievable that he unhooked from a safety line and vanished. He knew the route, he definitely knew the mountain, and he had more experience than the vast majority of climbing rangers for the Park Service. Probably, he says. He knew never to leave his backpack and supplies, as that surely would compromise his ability to survive. Also, he was a photographer. Surely he had his camera with him, but he is another photographer that vanished on Rainier under very, very unusual circumstances. So that's all the data there is. Nothing has ever been found of this guy. So yeah, it's a strange case.
So he had to unhook, and then he had to take his harness off.
Yeah. And then he ditches his backpack and his shovel. Maybe he this is the thing. Like, was he the one using that cave? Or was it something else? You know, the fact that his
still
stuff...
he had to take the harness and the backpack off, so it's like...
Right, so...
Or something did.
This is what's weird about it. His stuff is found 200 feet below the cave. If his stuff...
Like it was tossed?
Yeah, if his stuff had been found 200 feet above the cave, that would have made sense to me. Except for the shovel. So it's like either he digs the cave and then he tosses his stuff out the cave, or it rolls down the hill.
Yeah.
Right? Or why don't you bring it in there with you? Or he's making his way up and something's already in the cave and it comes out of the cave and gets him 200 feet below and, you know, unhooks this, knocks him out, whatever, unhooks the stuff, and then they're gone during the snowstorm. I have no idea.
Wild. Huh. Interesting fact about a snow cave. You need to scrape the ceiling of the snow cave each night because it'll get a thin layer of ice on it and it'll prevent oxygen from circulating.
Oh. So if you don't have an opening?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
If it's completely closed in, Yeah. Makes sense.
You got to scrape it off, otherwise you'll suffocate and you'll be sleeping. And just so you know.
Did you see that video of the guy, the snowboarder who fell in that tree well?
No.
Like, he was so lucky. Yeah, there was like a skier who had a GoPro on. And I thought
you like watching these videos of people, these crazy things happening to people.
Yeah, I see crazy. Yeah.
I skipped I don't like that.
Well, I didn't know that's what it was.
You're looking for them.
No. I was not looking for them when I saw this. I see the skier going down. I'm like, this is cool. Right? And then he passes over the bottom of a snowboard.
Oh.
It is just the bottom of the snowboard in the snow. And the skier's like, oh, shit. And and then he like takes his skis off and he's climbing back up. And there's this snowboard. He starts digging and there's
the feet on it. Yeah.
The dude was head first in a tree well.
Wow.
Which is just like, you know, you have all this snow and then there's a tree and then the snow around the tree.
Slough off the tree.
It's just, it's like, it looks solid, but you'll fall in this hole that's around the tree and then you can't get out. It's like a trap.
Ugh.
Yeah. And he dug the guy out and he was still alive, you know, but that dude got really lucky. And I thought of Charles McCullough, like you can, when they find remains of these people that, you know, they're head first and they died upright, you know, and often, I think they suffocate often because what you were just saying, this is what reminded me of it. You don't have enough air because you're surrounded by snow and your breath melts some snow, creates a pocket. And then, yeah. So, you know, this case we discussed with Charles McCullough,
and it's dark.
Yeah. That's right. They found his jeans like accordion down, like he had died standing upright underneath this big tree. So it implied that he was jammed into that, right?
Upright,
vertical, and like his body just.
So he dies.
Snow melts.
But the snow melts on the top first, and then the animals scavenge, and all that's left is the bones in the foot. Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So still the question with him is how the hell did he get out there, right?
Yeah.
And there were no boots. His coat was never found. His camera stuff was never found. You know, all this kind of, and he was way too far away from where he should have been. So, but anyway,
still better than the Bolsheviks.
It's probably true. Okay, this is an interesting case. Daming Shu, missing is November 4th, 2007. French Pete Creek, Three Sisters Wilderness in Oregon. Age of disappearance, 63 years. Daming and Shiju Shu had immigrated from China to the United States in the late 1980s. This couple wanted to settle on the western side of the United States. They eventually chose Eugene, Oregon. They were both energetic. Daming had an advanced education in mathematics, landed a job teaching at the University of Oregon. He held his professorship since 1990. Shishu was most recently working for a large electronics company that made memory chips and working 12-hour shifts. They enjoyed the outdoors, regularly went for hikes when their days off were compatible. Shiju enjoyed going to the Terwilliger Hot Springs near Cougar Reservoir and resting in the water. Daming was an all-around athletic and healthy man for 63 years old, and he rode his bike to work every day. His family stated that he did not have any medical issues that they knew about. So on November 4th, in 2007, Shiju got up early for her 7 a.m. shift, but Daming had the day to himself, and he told his wife he was going to go for a day hike near Cougar Reservoir, a 30-mile ride directly east of Eugene on Highway 126, and then a short 1-mile ride south to the reservoir. So I think he was going to ride his bike.
Jeez.
This area of the lake is very remote and desolate quickly, and it is just 50 miles north of Crater Lake National Park. So this is, again, a lot of weird stuff happens around this crater, which is in the middle of the Cascades. Okay, so Daming drove to Forest Service Road NF19, or 19, which travels south from Cougar Reservoir. He stopped in a small parking area. He was, again, smart and athletic, knew he'd need a hiking map if he traveled deep into the forest. He chose 100 Hikes in Northwest Oregon and Southwest Washington, which was written by William Sullivan. He took the portion of the book he needed and started the hike. So nobody knows exactly where he was at the beginning of the hike, but in the early afternoon, 2 hikers did see him at the summit of a mountain, Alele, not sure how to pronounce it, approximately 7 miles from his automobile at an elevation of 5,500 feet. His car was parked at approximately 2,000 feet. The couple
he took his car. Okay.
He took his car and then went on a hike. Yeah.
Okay. He didn't ride his bike 31 miles
I guess,
and then
I
hike
guess not.
7 miles to a mountain. I was just like, this dude is incredible.
Yeah. It did seem like he was going to go on a ride. Yeah. But it does. Okay. Day hike. Yeah. Okay. So the couple spoke with him. He seemed to be in good spirits, and they watched him start down the mountain towards the area of French Pete Creek, and they followed after him shortly after that. 7:15 p.m. that Shiju left her electronics firm, made the ride back to her home in Eugene. She arrived to find her husband wasn't there, and his car was still gone. She called his cell phone, but it had been left in his car. She then started to call her daughter in Portland. So basically, she gets nervous, and eventually she calls the Forest Service or the Eugene Police Department. So he was reported missing, and the searchers started to look in the area for his vehicle, and it wasn't long before they found it parked on Forest Service Road 19, just south of the reservoir, and they found half the map book that he took, along with his leather coat on the inside of the car. The daughter immediately came to Eugene from Portland. She told the press that her father was in good condition for his age, hiked regularly, and if he was not injured, should survive well. The Lane County Sheriff was the primary law enforcement agency that led the search. This area is extremely rugged, steep cliffs, very thick and lush woods. It appears to never have been logged and is even more thick with vegetation than other surrounding areas. The sheriff's office was assisted by the United States Forest Service, the Eugene Police, Benton and Deschutes Sheriff Search and Rescue, 2 National Guard helicopters, Civil Air Patrol, and the Smith County Rescue Team. Equestrians, hikers, planes in the sky, all looking for him. Plenty of water in the creeks and the rivers for the area for him to stay hydrated, and plenty to eat if he knew the right variety of plants to harvest.
Man, this place sounds amazing.
Yeah. There was 100 square miles of wilderness that were closed to all hikers while the search was going on. So they were like, he's in this general area. Let's close everything down and we're going to search this stuff. Bloodhounds were brought to the location where he was last seen, but they couldn't pick up a scent. I think this is strange. And again, like every time we do this, we tell ourselves we need to talk to a bloodhound expert.
Okay, maybe that's what it is. We never have.
Right.
We just keep saying we should do this.
I think the watcher said that he probably could, because he works with first responders. They probably know how to get search dogs. It would be great if I think he's mentioned, like, maybe I could find you guys somebody who knows.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Tracking dogs.
This all sounds familiar now.
We just haven't done it yet, but it would be awesome to
Let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. So the weather changed dramatically during the search. There was a very thick fog, and then rain and wind that changed to snow at higher elevations. The fog eventually grounded all the air support, and strong winds compromised the canines' efforts. So the bloodhounds were having trouble because there's so much wind. On Tuesday, 3 days after he had vanished, searchers thought they might have been following his tracks downhill. They followed the tracks until 3 a.m. So all night. Can you imagine? That's crazy. 3 a.m. Wednesday. But then they lost them in an area called Bear Flats.
And nobody gets lost when they're doing the search.
Sometimes people do, but yeah, they're pretty good at because they're all in contact with each other too. But yes, sometimes, and they're famous cases where a ranger disappears during a search, and then they put out this massive effort to find, because they find the person missing, and then everybody's coming back, and they're like, "Where's Pete?"
Yeah,
and then they're all back out there, looking for this guy. And it kind of like, I sort of love this thing, this is a kind of a separate note from the missing persons, but this thing that people do. Like, how often do you see, like, child falls in the river and 2 people drown trying to save, you know what I mean? Yeah, I love this.
This happened in our town.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Or like 4 people injured during a search for a missing child in the woods, right? It's this kind of thing is, we just pull out all the stops to try to help one person. I think it's awesome.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, this thing that happened in our town. I think the guy was he was a SEAL.
Oh yeah, by the dam.
There was by the dam, and there was this big waterfall coming down, and somebody fell in or something and got stuck in this
like a vortex.
I don't know what
there.
they call it under the waterfall, but then the guy's wife jumps in after him, and they're both in there. And this SEAL jumps in and he saves them both, and he drowns.
Get out. Yeah. God. Hero.
He gets them both out. It's
yeah.
just like, oh my gosh. It's just heart-wrenching. But you're just like, man.
Yeah, all respect.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heroes for sure.
Okay, so where was I at here? They were following what they thought was footprints. So late in the afternoon on Wednesday, 2 searchers were very deep in the French Peat Creek drainage and found the remaining half of the guidebook, the trail guidebook that he had been carrying. So I found this interesting because, again, this is an indication, like, they found this little book. This region is extremely thick with vegetation, and a very small creek was running through at the time. After 9 days of exhaustive searching, the Lane County Sheriff advised the public that the efforts to find Daming Shu had been terminated. They had combed mountainsides, creeks, gullies, and roads. They found nothing substantial except for his hiking guide. So the summary. He disappeared. Daming disappeared in the middle of the Cascade Mountain Range and in the middle of one of the largest clusters of missing people on the west coast of the United States. He fits into a very special classification of older males that have vanished under very odd circumstances. You can refer to Missing 411 Western United States for details on people missing in the Cascades. He was an experienced hiker, a brilliant individual, a mathematician who did not have medical problems. He came prepared for the hike. He had a map. The couple he met at the summit said he was carrying a small backpack, probably with supplies, maybe a coat. He told someone where he was traveling and when he would be back. So it does seem extremely odd that his map would be found in the French Peat area. He knew the map was his lifeline back to his automobile. You'd think he would be able to have safely travel with it. But French Peat Creek is one of the most lush, thick, and toughest areas to walk in the entire area. Strange that he would go there. How or what detoured him, we will never know.
That's the other thing.
Never found him.
You have to think of, like, they didn't find his backpack or anything.
Right. No items of clothing.
Yeah.
They found his map.
Yeah. So this is the thing. He's holding it in his hand and he knows it's his lifeline. And at some point he drops it and doesn't stop to go, like, get it.
Right. That's what I was saying. It's the last thing you want to lose.
Yeah.
You might shed your backpack if it's getting heavy. You might, I don't know, but the map.
Or maybe that's why he went missing, is because
he lost the map. He was on a ridge and it blew out of his hand.
Yeah, or I don't know. You'd have to. This is another thing. It's like, this is one of the issues where I'm always like, we need more data. Like, if you could go to the place where the map was, is there a cliff nearby that he could have been on top of? Like you said, set it down and the wind blew it off, and he's like, ah.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, I need to get down there, and then
hurts himself on the way down,
or whatever, or tries to go around.
Yeah,
and I don't know. It's just like, yeah.
So they thought they were following his footprints up to a point around 3 a.m. on Wednesday morning. They ended up in an area of Bear Creek Flats, which is near this French Pete Creek place. By Wednesday afternoon, they're in this area. You know, they lost his footprints, but they're in this area. And so this is, you know, you see this happen they have these patterns. They find some clue and then they start telling each other and they're like, okay, let's do a concentrated effort here. So they're doing a concentrated effort in this area and they find this half of this book.
Yeah.
Then they do another concentrated effort around the half of the book. Cause now we have this, we know he had this with him because the other half of the book is in his car that we know this was his, right? So if he had lost the map and injured himself or got lost on the way trying to get to the thing.
Should have been there. They should have found him.
That's right.
Yeah. He vanished.
That's right. He's never been found to this day. So I found that to be interesting because, again, so he's like, he bikes to work every day.
And this is the other thing is like, you can't, like thinking of like a typical abduction type of thing. How are you going to drag a 50-something-year-old guy out of the forest? Unless you're not human.
Right. Or a space-time anomaly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying it's like, these are like fae stories.
Yeah.
These old stories attributed some kind of magic to these creatures. But if you read the stories, a lot of the phenomena surrounding them is not necessarily directly done by them. They seem to be associated with the time distortions, I'm
thinking of like what would be cool for us to do is sometime when we're out west or whatever, like whenever we're traveling somewhere, we need to like comb through these cases and be like, here's one spot where we can actually go.
Yeah.
And like go to the area and just kind of look and try to understand the landscape and the forest and just see what the conditions are like to really get a better idea of just like, okay.
Yeah.
Not like you're going to solve the case or anything like that, but just to try to get a better understanding of like, okay, I've been to that forest or like
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine when I'm inventing this landscape in my head. I've never been there.
Yeah. Well, and we could do more of that on the show. I mean, I could prepare a bunch of Google
slideshow,
Google Map points where we could sort of zoom in and out and
look at the elevation.
Here's the last known area.
Get some photographs of the tree, like the undergrowth and all that. That would be cool.
That would take a lot more work.
Of course. Of course. I was just purely saying like to take one really strange case like out west and next time we're out there, it's like we're driving to this place.
Yeah.
We're going to go hiking out here just to look at the landscape.
Elisa said the same thing.
Smart girl.
She was like, we should go to some of these places. I'm like, why? You want to vanish without a trace?
The other thing the other thing that worries me every time I'm thinking about Scotty. He's always going to the Boundary Waters, man.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
bro, have you listened to our missing episodes? Our missing 411 episodes, dude?
This last time he went alone.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man. I don't know.
Do you get him to at least tell you when he expects to return so you can...
He has it all planned out,
okay.
Yeah, he knows. He's got the whole plan.
So there is somebody would know if he's late and they would notify. Yeah. Okay. Does he have a personal...
And I gave him terrible advice this last time because he was like, yeah, man, like, you know, his family was going to do something else. And he was just like, man, I really want to be with my family. There was something that was really just like, and he's like, but I should do this. Because with the Boundary Waters, you have to, there's
a time slot.
You have to request it way in advance and then they give you the time slot. So I was like, I feel like you should do it because it's like, I was thinking of it more in like, sort of like you're going to go out there alone. You're going to be in this incredibly beautiful place. This is something he lives for like every year to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was 2 days or something. And like I'm sorry, Scotty, I'm just telling you all these personal details about your life. But anyway, there was something about where he was just really wanting to be with his family. But at the same time, it was like, I've planned this, I've done all this work. And I was like, you know what, you should do it. Because I was thinking like, you'll go out there and you'll have, because you have a desire, it's a discipline, and then you might get some great inspiration or some beautiful like enlightenment experience. Almost like a fast. Mm-hmm. You don't really want to do it, but you've been planning it, and it's like you do the hard thing. Yeah. So that, and then like, what if he just never came back? I'd be like, I'm sorry. It does
is he
worry.
Out there right now?
No, he's back. Okay. Yeah. It does worry me.
Why was
though.
it terrible advice then?
Because I'm thinking about this.
Yeah.
He could have been having like some kind of premonition that it was like a bad idea.
Yeah.
Sorry, Scotty, I gave you bad advice.
Well, let's take a break.
Okay. And here we are, the final segment. I guess it's going to be an 11er, folks. It's each one of these cases, I don't know, it's like requires a discussion. It seems like it's like
I like the discussion because this is the point. This is 90% of why we started this podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd be reading some weird stuff, or you'd be reading some weird stuff, and then I'm like, dude, look at this weird stuff. And then you think about it in a completely different way than I do. So it's great. And then also just, there's something about forcing your brain to push your ideas through language that makes you kind of organize your thoughts,
Yep.
Sometimes when you hear yourself talking about it, you're like, nope, that's actually really dumb.
Yeah. Believe me.
Yeah.
That's my...
happens to me all the
time.
Okay, so Missing 411, North America and Beyond by David Paulides. Again, check the show notes. I will have a link in there where you can go and buy the books, and this one specifically. I'm only reading select cases.
Don't buy them on Amazon.
That's right. Don't get them on Amazon.
They're not...
Follow the links.
They're not... They're bootlegs.
That's right. They're being resold at a way higher price. At least that was the case the last time I looked at it. So, next case. Ronald M. This is an adult missing August 9th, 2012 in the afternoon at Russell Lake, Jefferson Wilderness. Age of disappearance, 52 years old. Mount Jefferson, 10,497 feet in elevation, is the centerpiece of the Mount Jefferson Wilderness area. This area is almost exactly 20 miles north of the Three Sisters Wilderness, which is where the last guy, this Daming, it's almost exactly north in the same string of mountains. Ronald was hiking with two friends from the Portland area, and they had hiked up to a ridge above Russell Lake near Mount Jefferson. Ronald was an experienced hiker, had a tent, sleeping bag, photography equipment, and supplies with him. His two friends stated they were going to hike down to the lake and put the camp together. Ronald stated he wanted to stay on the ridge and take photos. So another thing you notice in a lot of these cases is there's a photographer who is specifically set up to take photos and vanishes along with his camera and all of his gear, and they're just never found, along with the camera and all the gear. I think the famous thing about Stacey Ross, the one where Paulides could never get the case, the FOIA, she was taking pictures, and the only thing they ever found of her was her lens cap, right? So,
which that's so weird too. Is that like just thinking about like being out with a bunch of gear, and you're so particular about your gear.
Yeah.
So like, obviously they went missing, but it's like you find this item of the gear that's like important.
Yeah. They were taking photos, and they got taken. That's the implication. I don't know if that's what happened.
Yeah,
something
really
out there doesn't want pictures being taken of it is the kind of the, my conspiracy guy is like, you're taking pictures of what you think is the wilderness. Something out there looks up and sees a camera and is like, nope. No. Yes. Exactly. So, he wanted to stay on the ridge and take more photos. An August 15th, 2012 article on KATU.com had the following statement. 52-year-old Ronald M was separated from his party near Russell Lake about 1 mile north of Mount Jefferson, deputies said. So it started to get dark. He didn't arrive at the camp. The friends did look for him that night, but he could not be located. So the following day, the United States Forest Service and the Marion County Sheriff's Department were notified, and they started a formal search. So he just never showed up to the camp. The sheriff was notified that Ohm had a medical condition that required daily medication. So I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, maybe.
Insulin. The path from the ridge where he was taking photos to the point to the camp at the lake was unmistakable. So in other words, standing on the ridge, you couldn't miss the path, right? It's like right there. The lake was in clear view during the walk, and the hike is easily made from the point on the ridge. The Marion County Sheriff contacted the Oregon National Guard. They put helicopters in the air along with planes from the Civil Air Patrol. There were over 200 ground searchers that worked a grid pattern looking for him. His family members came to the search headquarters and were present during the 6 days that teams covered the area. At the end of the 6th day, an agreement with the family members was made and the formal search was terminated. The teams did not find any of Ronald's equipment, his backpack, his hat, his camera, sleeping bag, nothing. They stated they covered 300 square miles and utilized 3,500 search hours. So, a lone hiker, photographer, and an individual taking medication, formerly missing near dark of the day he was last seen, went missing in an area where there are dozens of small lakes in a high-altitude setting with exposed boulders and rocks. A formal 6-day search with National Guard helicopters and Civil Air Patrol produced nothing. So where are people like Ronald going? Yeah. And Paulides actually says, he's like, look at the landscape around here. There isn't a lot of vegetation. It's not like you can disappear into the woods.
Yeah.
It's difficult to get lost from the ridge to the lake. So the first implication is that he went somewhere that was away from the camp for some reason.
Yeah.
So he also says the number of people that have disappeared in this corridor of the Cascades is disturbing. There's been one person to vanish for each of the summer months in 2012. and the last two were over 50 years old and missing approximately 25 miles from each other, both while alone in the wilderness area. So
but when he says disappeared, like just never found nothing. Man, that is wild. Are there? I mean, I'm sure there's people that are found, right?
Yeah.
Like
some people get lost and
some people
located.
fall, some people somehow die or whatever. But obviously, I guess where my brain is going, it's like you're not going to find the people that disappear in this manner,
right? Exactly.
So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
That is really
He
strange.
says much of the area where people have vanished and are, like they've never been found is above the timberline where there isn't a whole lot of, there's not a lot of cover. So he goes on to speak about boulders and the fact he points out that the boulders do play it's similar. Boulders are like the huckleberries, right? Some people are picking berries and they disappear without a trace, or they're in a boulder field and they just vanish. So are the
boulder just like
right?
Yeah.
Remember we talked about this concept? The grouper, right? It can look like a boulder underwater. Yeah. So you're like, I look out in that field of boulders. One of them might be something else. So Paulides just says here, this is interesting at the end of this Cascades. He says, I would never hike or hunt the Cascades alone. Even if I was in those mountains, I would be heavily armed and carrying a personal transponder. Anyone with any degree of common sense can read the numbers of people that we have documented, the strange conditions under which they vanished, and stranger conditions under which some of them have been found, and realize something quite unusual is happening.
Oh, so there are?
Yeah. Some of them do get located, and you're like, how did they get there? Yeah. Everyone involved in the Can-Am Missing Project has deep compassion for the missing and their families. So we hope that the exposure given to the Ronald M case and others in this book somehow reveals what is happening and brings closure. Okay. 18 months old, Lee Littlejohn went missing December 23rd, 1977, Redding, California. So yeah, 18 months. This incident occurred on the outskirts of Redding, California, outside the city limits in Shasta County. So this is around Mount Shasta. Redding is located at the far northern end of San Joaquin?
San Joaquin.
San Joaquin. Yeah, San Joaquin County, and is the starting location for the range of mountains that extends north to British Columbia. The Sacramento River flows from Shasta Dam through the center of the town and is a popular recreational spot for water skiing and fishing. But the area surrounding the town can become very desolate quickly. On December 23rd in 1977, 18-month-old Lee Littlejohn was being babysat by his aunt at her home 7 miles west of the Redding area, near the Whiskeytown National Recreation Area. He was playing with his cousin, Loy Fry, in the home during a heavy rainstorm when his aunt went to a different area of the home to do laundry. When she came back to the central area, she could not find either child or the dogs. They had 2 dogs with them. A quick search was made of the house and the yard, and then the Shasta County Sheriff was called. So the sheriff responded in force to look for the children. The heavy rain made search conditions extremely difficult. They couldn't find any tracks, and the rain made ground searches treacherous. 55 minutes after the sheriff arrived, luck would strike once. They found Loy Fry, 2 years old, near the house with her dog, but she couldn't say where Lee was located. Loy was cold but in good condition and returned to her residence. So the effort to find Lee, the 18-month-old, continued through the night as temperatures plummeted. In the early morning hours, a new search team of 200 arrived, and they expanded the search. Around noon, they made a discovery as is described in the December 24th article in the Long Beach Independent. The body of a missing 1.5-year-old boy was found on a wooded ridge 3/4 of a mile from his home 23 hours after he wandered outside his home during a driving rainstorm. He was found wearing light trousers and a t-shirt with no shoes or socks. You can hear the concern in the deputy's speech as later in the same article he explains what they found. "You wouldn't think he could have wandered that far, and it was up a steep hill," said Sergeant Dave Zebo, Shasta County Sheriff's Office. So Loy and Lee disappeared during a heavy rainstorm. Both took the dogs with them. Loy and her dog were found in less than an hour after they vanished. Lee's dog did return 6 hours before he was found. Remember, Mildred was in the laundry room for just 10 minutes, and during that time, the children opened the door and walked into harm's way. One question, Paulides says, that I have always had regarding this case: how far can an 18-month-old boy walk in 10 minutes? It's hard to believe that Mildred left the room and the kids darted out the door. There must have been some time before they left, or something else happened. And you can hear the wheels of Sergeant Zebo's mind churning as he explained where they found Lee's body. Yes, the body was found up a steep hill, too far away for the sergeant to think it was completely normal. And how did Lee Littlejohn manage to climb a steep hill during a heavy rainstorm? The sheriff's department stated they believed Lee died of exposure and that they were sending the body to the coroner for confirmation, but I could not find any article stating what the coroner's findings were. So this isn't the first time a young boy has disappeared in this area. I wrote about the disappearance of Austin Sparks from Montgomery Creek, 15 miles northeast of Redding. Austin disappeared under highly unusual circumstances on January 4th, 2004, another wintertime occurrence when conditions were brutally cold. There is also the disappearance of Billy Coleman, January 1st, 1940, from Viola, just 20 miles east of Redding. Littlejohn disappeared on December 23rd, Coleman, January 1st, and Sparks, January 4th. So yeah, it's strange for these kids to walk outside with no...
In December.
Yeah, with no cold weather gear in the rain and just... It's strange.
They will try to go, I mean, like an 18-month-old will just go outside like in their underwear in the freezing cold.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what are you doing?
Looking for wolves.
And then, you get both. You get that they'll just want to go out into extreme weather.
God, are you trying to kill me here, bro?
Sorry. Sorry about that.
Murder me.
Sorry about that. They'll go into, I'm trying to create an extreme weather situation in here.
Yeah. I'm like, why?
You're going to die from exposure.
Why am I sweating?
Sorry. Yeah, it is hot. I don't know how it was nice and cool in here.
It was, yeah.
So yeah, they'll do both things. Like they'll want to go out in underwear when it's like freezing cold and they're fine and they're like, they don't want to put jackets on. They don't want to put any clothes on. Or like, you
bundle them all up and take them outside and they're like, it's cold.
Yeah. Both.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So that happens. And then of course, like on the opposite in the heat,
they want to put on at least clothes.
That does happen too. Yes. They want to dress up with like long sleeve shirts and boots. And so I'm like, why it's freaking 100 degrees outside.
And we're going swimming.
But like, 80 degrees, they're like, like right. They can't. And you're like, anyways. Yeah. It's strange. But yeah, just recently we had.
But what do you think of 18 months, right? Like how far is an 18-month-year-old?
I can't. That's what I'm saying. Like
I know they're all different, but
they may have learned to walk at 9 months, which would be pretty early. So they've been walking half their life at this point, 18 months. Mm-hmm. I've seen like one of my friend's kids was like freaking riding scooters and just doing all this crazy stuff at a very young age. And I'm like, wow, way more athletic than my kids. But so I don't know about how far, but it's just, it's strange. I mean, just like, I don't know, doing the hardest thing is like not, I agree with the idea that like normally they go downhill.
Yeah.
They don't want to, they do love to climb.
Yeah.
Like if there's a pile of dirt, like they're climbing it.
Yeah.
And then they're trying to climb stuff that you're like, no, they're going to die.
Yeah.
But
I guess a hill is a very large pile of dirt.
It was
a mile and a half.
Yeah. A mile and a half. I just can't even.
Let me make sure that's right.
I can't, it's hard to imagine a child at that age. Like,
sorry, 3/4 of a mile.
Still.
Yeah.
Doing something that difficult for that long. Because normally if it's like too difficult, they don't want to do it. But of course, they're all different.
This is the other thing is like he made it to the top. He's on the ridge, right? So he climbed up there, made it to the top, and then succumbed to exposure, right?
So I've never seen. I've never allowed any of my kids to be exposed for that long, right. But like that's what I was trying to point out. Like they'll want to go out into the cold rain with no clothes on, basically. And you're just like, no. Yeah. And then 18
and a half and 2 years old is kind of too young to ask, right? Like,
no, you're just like, yeah.
Like, why did you go outside? Well,
oh no, you can't. Yeah. They don't. No. They're not going to be able to tell you anything worthwhile.
Yeah. So what I thought when I read this, and this is so I'm like, what I try to do to myself.
I shouldn't say that they can't tell you anything worthwhile. You can't discern what's worthwhile and what's not.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So when I read these, I try to, because while I'm reading it, my mind is going all these weird paranormal conspiracy things. Yeah. But then after I'm done, I'm like, okay, so if I was going to make up a normal, let's explain this away. The first thing I thought of with this is one of them opens the door for some reason and the dog, bam, outside. And they all follow the dog out there.
Yeah. Or maybe, yeah.
So they chase the dog. And maybe it was the little kid's dog, right? So the girl and her dog follow the little kid and his dog out there. The little kid's going after the dog. The girl and her dog go out. She stops because it's cold and it's raining. Her dog stays with her. The searchers come and they eventually find her within an hour. Mm-hmm. Right. But the little boy is chasing this dog. And for some reason, this dog is headed up this hill.
That seems plausible.
And he runs up this hill barefoot, no socks, in a t-shirt in December.
Yeah.
In the rain.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, like, we had this rain recently and it was cold.
Mm-hmm.
This latest rain we had, it was like cold when it was raining, especially like being out there. Like I could feel like Lila's skin was like cold to the touch. And I'm like, let me put a long sleeve, like a hoodie on you. Just, nah.
Mm. Yeah.
So I let her stay out for a little bit, but then I'm like, you're going inside.
Yeah.
Like it's,
fingers are turning blue.
but she just doesn't want to.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can imagine, and she's 3.
Yeah.
Like I can imagine a little kid, just like, they just don't, maybe just not even really that aware of their own body.
Yeah.
Until it's too late, So that's all I just, the exposure part, like dying of exposure. It's like, I can imagine that's possible.
What about running barefoot in the dark up a rocky mountain ridge? Like
your idea of chasing the animal is like a pretty good one.
Yeah. I wish they would have said, like, what's the condition of the feet? Because, sometimes they find them and usually they're dead, but they find this kid having traveled a fair distance, up to a mile, maybe more, barefoot.
They also don't weigh much,
right?
So the
feet are unharmed.
I know the you think about it in terms of like pounds per square inch on your feet. Like it's so much more.
Yeah,
like we don't have that much more surface area touching the ground than they do.
Yeah, but we have a lot more weight.
We're like way more weight.
Yeah,
and the same flesh.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they can run on rocks and stuff, and it's like Whereas we're just like, oh, you step on a little pebble, dude. You're like, oh.
Do not step on the Lego. Yeah. They can step on the Legos all day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it's terrible.
So
got to keep a close eye on them. I've had that. I've definitely walked out of the room, come back in the room, doors wide open. That's the other thing. They don't shut the doors.
Oh, when they go outside?
You would come out and like the doors just open.
Yeah.
And you're like, you go out there. Where are you?
Yeah. Okay. Patrick Amen or Amen. Missing this June 15th, 2012 in Manson, California. Age of disappearance 40 years. So Patrick was hiking with friends in the foothills looking for arrowheads. This is why I read this story. This is a cautionary tale for both of us. Just below Mount Lassen National Park at approximately the 3,200 foot elevation. This area is thick with vegetation, with some large trees. Late in the afternoon, the trio, he calls them hikers, but these were arrowhead hunters, Paulides. The trio separated, and Patrick went off on his own. The group agreed to meet back at the cars, but Patrick never arrived back at the vehicles, so the Forest Service was called. The Tehama County Sheriff's Department was the lead search organization. Deputies combed the area where Patrick was lost Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. The Reading Record Searchlight ran an article on June 18th that stated the following: searchers found no evidence of violence, but the lack of evidence has cast suspicions on the circumstances of his disappearance. There are scattered homes in the area with paved roads that crisscross the region. Deputies used a variety of resources that included the California Highway Patrol's helicopters, canines, and volunteers, and they failed to find anything but a few footprints. On June 23rd, so what is that, 8 days later, 8 days after he went missing, the family hired a private helicopter, Air Shasta, to fly the area where he disappeared. During the flight, the pilot saw a location with bird activity, so he sees birds circling.
I was thinking this through this whole show. It's like,
where are the birds?
Yeah. Like some places may not have vultures.
I mean, we
and
have
stuff,
it out here. You can see.
I'm like, it would be difficult for somebody to go, like if there was a search.
Yeah.
Some people go missing. There's never a search, or the search is too late. But yeah, if you're within hours, like, and then the person dies, like you're gonna find them.
Yeah.
Because the birds are just, circling in the sky.
Right. So the The pilot saw this location with bird activity and sent ground searchers into the region, and they found him. His body was located in heavy brush in an area 200 yards from the roadway off Ponderosa Way and Forward Road. So this one we could have actually, if we were looking on a map, we could pinpoint the spot. Deputies stated that there were no obvious indications of violence to the body. A June 26 article in the Corning Observer said this: "It looks like he crawled into the area where his body was found," Greer said. "It's hard for me to believe if he was conscious when the search was being conducted that he wouldn't have called out for help." In the same article was this: "A complete and thorough search was conducted. Why we weren't able to find him remains a mystery." Lieutenant David Greer was the on-scene commander for the Tehama County Sheriff's Office in the search. So he was found 100 yards from the area where he was last seen.
Was he wearing camo?
I don't know. Doesn't say. The Reading Searchlight on June 25th ran a story explaining how Patrick was found and the facts surrounding his discovery. "We walked by him 100 times, the searchers said. How they missed him is the real story. Deputies confirmed that he had a wallet filled with cash. He wasn't injured." Later in the same June 25th article was this: "Doherty, disappointed by the tragic end to the search, was at a loss to explain why search teams didn't find Amin sooner." So it's like he goes missing. They're hunting for arrowheads. 100 yards from where him and his friends split up. He's arrowhead hunting. He's not, he finds a spot. He starts crawling.
Yeah.
And then he just dies. I don't know. It's weird. Like maybe he had a heart attack, but he's young. Well, I mean, he's 40.
When was this?
2012. So the summary says dozens of searchers walked by his body during several days of informal and formal searches.
He must have been in camo.
The California Highway Patrol helicopter did not see his body 100 yards from where he was last seen. And the FLIR unit also didn't see him. The infrared radar.
Cold.
Yeah.
He was cold.
He wasn't there.
Or he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Canine teams came into the search area and apparently also walked by the body.
Okay.
And didn't react.
That ain't happening.
8 days after Patrick disappears, he is found when birds were probably feeding on the decomposing body. He is found under circumstances that mimic many disappearances identified in my books. He's also found in very close proximity to the only 6 small bodies of water anywhere in the region.
So 8 days. What temperature is it?
This is June in California. Around 3,200 foot elevation in the Mount Lassen National Park. So it was probably warm. I mean,
yeah, I don't have enough data on this, but one thing to look into would be like, decay rates.
Yeah.
At that time of year in that area. And then like, really, when do the birds stop?
Right.
Feeding on the, like 8 days later.
Like birds they show up. They're circling.
They show up within like
they're circling when you're dying.
Yeah. But like think of a roadkill or something, right? Like within a day, they're there. 8 days later, they're not there.
Right.
Like they're done.
They're done. Yeah. And I'm saying if the bird activity, the circling stuff is happening when something is still crawling.
Well, it's also,
they're kind of looking down, waiting for you to stop.
But bird activity is also happening like while they're feeding.
While they're sitting there feeding. Yeah, you're right.
They're flying in and out of it and whatever. But it's like that's not going to last for 8 days.
Right. So searchers stated that it almost appeared like he crawled into the thicket, and most were surprised he never called out to searchers who were calling his name. I mean, come on. How does he die within 100 yards? And all these searchers are out there yelling for him.
Yeah.
His friends are calling for him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really strange. I was going to say too about like, if you're hunting for arrowheads, you're going to be right near a body of water like a creek or whatever. You're not going to get lost.
Yeah.
Because I guess you could, but you would have been following a creek bank.
Maybe a no longer existent creek. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still there.
Yeah.
Like the ravine or the, a dry creek or whatever. But my point is like, it's geographical. So like if you go to a place specifically to look for arrowheads, I'm assuming that this person, like they were not novices at this. So they're near a creek bank or some kind of watershed. So you you can't really get lost is my point.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be following that. And then when you decide to go back, like you might be circling and going into this spot and that spot. And then you're like, okay, time to go back. Well, like go to the creek bank and go back where you.
Sure.
So
there's also, he says, it's sparsely populated. There's homes. There's a few roads that kind of go through the area.
Yeah. So there'd be power poles.
Yeah. And at night, homes are lit up. You can walk towards the lights. It's not like, really I don't know how rugged it is. Again, we would need to look at some maps.
But I can totally see a guy hunting for arrowheads out there in full camo.
And crawling into a very tight thicket because he's finding stuff and he's crawling into, But yeah, it's just, the difficult part is how does he die?
Dogs.
How do the dogs not find him?
That's really strange. Yeah, so I get your point. Like, he wasn't there.
Yeah.
That's really
seems like he wasn't there.
Bad.
So, the last thing Paulides says here is, as of the date of this publication, there has been no indication from the coroner on the cause of death. I will point out, this guy went missing in 2012. This book was published in 2012. So it's possible there's new information on this case.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to back up a bit. We're about to end here. One last story. I wanted to finish with this one because this one is weird. And we've talked about this one. This is the robot grandma story.
Yeah.
3 years old. Mount Shasta. So I have no idea whether we can take this story seriously or not. Okay, because this is basically, Paulides is putting it in here and he's basically saying, this is what the family says that the kid told them.
Yeah.
Okay? But it's weird. So let's just go through it. I just don't know. I don't know what to think of it. So Paulides starts out by saying, this is one of the most unusual stories you will ever read in any of my books. The name, date, and location of this incident have been changed to protect the victim and the family. So it was near Mount Shasta, happened sometime around October 2010. John, he's naming the kid John Doe. John was camping with his family on the banks of a large creek. Right around 6:30 p.m., he disappears. The parents were searching the bordering forest and creek, could not locate him. They called the sheriff, United States Forest Service, for assistance. This area does have a long history of high strangeness. It is very thick with big trees. It has great fishing, lots of wildlife. Paulides says he's fished here dozens of times. The location is in the shadow of Mount Shasta. And with that comes a history of many strange things occurring over the years. Because, Shasta is full of legends. Like, it's Shasta itself. Like, you can find, like you were talking about ancient civilizations living under the ground. Like, Shasta is one of the they say the doors leading into, the lost Lemurian civilization is in Mount Shasta somewhere. So, I mean, it's like there's a lot of very weird legends about this mountain. Okay, local search and rescue crews and the sheriff responded to the scene. They set out looking for John. Approximately 5 hours after the search started, he was found lying in a thicket directly next to one of the primary trails that the searchers had been using. Okay, so this is another common occurrence. The kid is found lying basically next to the trail that everybody had been walking up and down during the search process. He was in good condition and returned to his parents at approximately 11:30 p.m. So it was a short search, thank God. So Paulides,
5 hours, 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah. So Paulides says, at this point, I will usually write about the unusual aspects of the case and how it relates to other disappearances, but this is different. I have always believed that children return home and tell their parents what happened to them. These stories are not heard by the media, or they are filtered by the parents because of their believability. In this case, John's parents heard my interview on Whitley Strieber's show and immediately made the connection of John's disappearance and other children that have vanished across North America. So they contacted Whitley and asked how they could contact me. Whitley gave them my email, and you will read John's story below. So I was advised that John is a very intelligent boy, acts much older than his 3 years. When he'd returned home, he was initially quiet about the disappearance until he saw his grandmother. Once Grandma was seen, John told her that he had seen her twin while he was missing. He explained that he doesn't remember how he got lost, but his first memory is waking up in a cave or dungeon. He used both words to describe it. He says that he saw his grandma with him in the dark room. He stated that there was a ladder up the side wall that led to a bright light. The woman spoke to him in a very nice and polite way. He stated that she was interested in his tummy. He explained that he thought he was talking with his grandma the entire time until he saw sparks come from her head. So he then decided to believe that she was a robot. He says he saw guns and purses that had lots of dust on them on the walls of the cave, and also saw other robots in the cave that never moved.
Oh my God.
John explained that near the end of the time with the lady, she placed a piece of sticky paper on the ground and told him that she wanted him to poop on the paper. And he said that he didn't have to. Like, in other words, he didn't need to poop.
Yeah.
It was at some time after this point that she took him from the room and placed him under the bush and told him to stay there. And he never explained how he got from the room, but he does remember being found. In conversations with John's family, his story has stayed consistent, and he has continually stated that he was never afraid. I had an opportunity to question the grandmother. She is very sharp and aware of her surroundings. So this is the second weird aspect of this case. She explained that she had actually been at the exact spot where John disappeared. She was there several months prior to the boy disappearing. She stated that she and a companion spent the night on the banks of the creek, and her partner slept in the truck. She says that she awoke in the morning with a stinging pain at the base of her neck. Her partner looked and found a small red dot, but nothing else. The woman doesn't know if this is related to John's disappearance, but wanted to explain that it's coincidental that she was at the exact location months earlier.
Wow. Doppelganger.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Summary.
That's crazy.
So Paulides says, I'm not one to question the honesty of people when it comes to sensitive information such as this. I was able to confirm that John was lost and was reported missing along the banks of that creek, and there was a 5-hour search that resulted in him being found. The fact that the boy talked about the incident to a trusted relative isn't surprising. When children are in comfortable surroundings with people that are trusted, they say things that they would not normally state to strangers. So if other parents have heard stories from their lost children, I would like to hear from them. I have heard that John is healthy and happy and maturing rapidly. So yeah, that story is just...
That's crazy, dude. It sounds to me like the other robots are skeletons.
Yeah.
And there's purses and other things in there.
Yeah.
And grandma is a doppelganger.
Yeah.
Or grandma.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Like, if somebody took a sample of her while she was sleeping there, and then, because I was thinking they took her DNA and they're like, okay, we want her progeny, and then they get John later, because what they're interested in is her line or something. But yeah, you're right. They could also use it to make the robot look like her or whatever it was, a doppelganger.
Well, I'm just thinking about, he saw purses with dust and all this stuff in the cave, and then there were other robots that weren't moving, and I'm like, yeah, those were skeletons.
Yeah, could be skeletons.
Of
right.
Victims.
Yeah. It's a weird story.
I don't want to blame grandma, but she might be like one of those normal people.
Yeah. That's the idea that they're skeletons. That had never occurred to me. I just thought, okay, those are other units that are not in operation, and the guns and purses are of other missing people. Like, yeah. Wild. They're all covered in dust. Ugh. Samples being taken. Ooh. So yeah, I wanted to throw that one in there, folks. That last one, like I said, is a massive outlier from what normally you read in these books, but I mean, who knows? And I will also say he gets this information from people who listen to Whitley Strieber, so you already know where their interests lie. Like, right, Whitley Strieber wrote Communion. He's the Aliens Abduction. Right. So they're interested in that topic. That doesn't mean that this is crap. I'm just saying, so they're already interested. If they're listening to Whitley, they are immersed in this subject.
It could be that the parents got interested in Whitley after their child disappeared and came back with this crazy story.
Yeah.
And then they start listening and start talking to the grandma, and they're like, grandma was like, I did camp there before. Like, maybe the grandma told them it was like a cool spot, and then they went. Wow. And so it's like, they get interested in the topic because of this situation.
Okay, yeah, okay.
And then the grandma's like, yeah, well, the only weird thing that happened to me is I just woke up with a crick in my neck, and then there was like a red dot.
Yeah, a little dot there. Yeah.
They tried it. They could
maybe an ant bite.
Yeah, they could have possibly just questioned her, give us every detail about the fact that, anything that happened to you when you were there. So it could be.
You're right.
Not the other way around.
See, this is, I had never thought of that. Because I was like, well, they're listening to Whitley Strieber. That means they're immersed in the UFO subject. And you're like, well, maybe they got interested because their kid went missing and then they found out this story.
Yeah.
You're totally right. That had not occurred to me. Wow. All right. Well,
that is a crazy update on that story. Holy crap.
We have plenty more cases. I'm gonna keep going through the book and marking more, and we'll just keep going as long as I find this stuff fascinating.
Yeah, this is great. It's good. I don't want to say good fun.
Yeah,
but it is. I mean, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah. Do we have producers? Do you happen to know?
Dang, I've been slacking on the job.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. Next week.
All right, we'll do it.
We got to remember, because we got Patreon producers that we haven't thanked in months.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, so
we've been
slacking on the producers. We're sorry to all you guys that are producers and everybody who supports the show. Thank you so much. We do have a couple of announcements. This week, so it's Saturday.
Yeah,
we're going to be hanging out at Turtle Creek Vineyard at the tasting room there from like 2 to 6 p.m. Kyle and I, Laura, Elisa, we're going to be chilling. If anyone wants to come hang out, we'll be there for 4 hours. Come hang out. We'll talk pyramids. We'll drink some wine. We can give you guys a tour of the vineyard.
Yep.
We're doing a very short museum tour and dinner with Luke Caverns. In San Antonio, we're going to look at the Egyptian section of the museum. Luke says that there's an excellent whole Egyptian section in the museum in San Antonio. So we're going to go look at that. And then we're going to go eat, have a dinner, and Luke will give a presentation. Kyle's got a presentation we're going to give. It should be fun. So you guys can sign up for that. It's like, I don't know what is going to $70, which pays for the museum ticket and a meal ticket.
Saturday, November 16th, afternoon at the museum. It's on Eventbrite.
So I'll put links to this in the show notes.
It's from 2 to 9:30 p.m. And there's all the information is there. It is 7.5 hours. I'm trying to look for the price here. So Laura and Elisa have been organizing this. So we're getting like a special deal with the museum for anybody that joins for the group. And then I guess there's like a restaurant involved and so and you buy the ticket, it's all included.
Yeah, we're getting a group deal with the museum and a group deal with the restaurant, and so you buy the ticket, you get the ticket for the restaurant and the museum, and some presentations. We'll hang out and look at Egypt stuff, and it'll be fun.
Yeah,
and Luke, of course, is always great.
$75.
Yeah, $75, and he just went to Peru and came back, so we got to get him back on the show too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, he sent us some amazing pictures.
Oh my God, his photos from Peru are amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm super
what else?
jealous.
We're going to London.
Yep.
So, in the Discord, we've got some people from the UK that are basically starting to plan a meetup. It's going to be around the 9th.
Yeah.
But we're going to be there from the 5th to the 15th. And we have some appointments on Mondays, but other than that, we're basically open, right?
Yeah.
So any of you peeps out there in the UK,
there's appointments, but there's also a couple of things we're going to go meet with some other people and go to some places.
Yeah.
We're not going to be inviting everybody to, but we also want to have multiple meetups. So let's just go.
So if you're in the area, you can contact us. Give me an email, if you're in the Discord, ping us. You can go to the meetups channel and see there are some of the UK people and snakes in the Discord are planning what we're going to do.
Yeah. And also we can be in the Discord and be posting hey, we're planning to go here. Cause we don't know anything about it. So once we get there and kind of figure out what the hell we're doing and talking to people and we can just post in the Discord, hey, we're going to go here on this day.
Yeah.
And we'll just be letting people know what we're doing if we're going and visiting some public sites, and then we'll go and have pints.
Yeah. Because I know some of you in the Discord have already said I can't come in the middle of the week, but can we do a weekend?
Yes.
We'll figure it out, man, for sure. Like anyone who can't get away from work but can be around during a weekend, we'll hook up. We'll go have some pints. I want some fish and chips. Beans and toast. Come on.
Yeah, let's go see some cathedrals. Let's go look at some stone circles and standing stones.
Can we do some urbex?
Yeah.
Where you
what's that?
Get down into the subterranean stuff, go all the way down to you find the Roman shit.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're doing that.
Yeah. I want to see this Victorian theater that was lost beneath London. Come on. Any urbexers out there? Let's go.
Yeah, so come to the vineyard if you're a local.
Yeah.
TurtleCreekVineyard.com. You can look up the location of the place. 183 Fall Creek Road.
There you go. 183
Kerrville, Texas.
Road. Yeah. I can put all this in the show notes again.
So it's open on the weekends, Friday through Sunday from noon to 6.
Yeah.
It's always open, so anybody can come by there.
Tell them you're from the podcast if you go by.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are in the area,
Carl to set up a podcast discount.
Yeah, we need a podcast discount. Yeah. For those of you who are in the area but don't want to drive all the way in just to hang out for a couple of hours, we are going to plan a camping thing at some point. We'll just let you guys know, okay, we're going to be camping
Mount Shasta, way out there.
Yeah, we're going to go to Rainier or
no
Crater Lake. Come on. No, we got a couple of great state parks in the area. Like there's Garner, there's Enchanted Rock, which I've been wanting to go back to. So we'll let you guys know, that we're going to be out at Enchanted Rock for a weekend camping
with all of our guns.
Yeah. No, it'll be awesome. And you'll just find a perfectly orderly campsite, no one around. That's right. All right. Thank you guys. We love you.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.